Chapter 94. When Lautner and Eric discovered the abnormality, they were nervous, but they did not make any mistakes. At the same time, both of them went into stealth mode. One was a Devil Hunter Ranger, while the other was a Shadow Ranger. What was the occupation of a Devil Hunter Ranger? It was a professional hunter that targeted dark creatures. It could be said that all of Lautner's skills had a special effect on dark creatures. Especially with Lautner's occupation, it meant that he had to enter the Devil's Den for special training and experience. He was no stranger to the possible situations that could occur in the Devil's Denver. In the instant that the two darkness beasts pounced on him, he actually disappeared without a trace with a single leap. As for Eric, as a Shadow Ranger, he was a high-explosive archer who hid in the dark. He was a long-range killer in the magic fantasy era. It was the instinct of dark creatures to live in the dark. But Eric also had some skills. When he saw two blood-red eyes, he brazenly squatted down in the grass and disappeared. Why did both of them have such skills? Because the creators of these occupations had a deep understanding of a principle. Only by surviving until the end could they achieve true victory. When Mucku Red saw this scene from outside the illusion, his green eyes flashed nonstop. It was as if he was going blind. William was the only one left in the illusion. His body was burning with blue battle energy, and he looked mighty and domineering. It was not that he did not want to survive, but he did not have skills. As more and more dark creatures appeared, pairs of blood-red eyes stared at William. The city lord knew that he had nowhere to retreat, so he took large strides forward. William did not have any special stealth skills, but he had a way to deal with illusions. He could pierce through them, get lost. When William saw the dark creatures suddenly attacking, a long and narrow thunder, sword energy, swept across. Wherever the sword energy passed, most of the dark creatures were sliced in half. The halves of the corpses were still flashing with electric arcs, illuminating their original bodies. A group of skeleton soldiers? Aren't they underestimating me? William was about to grin when he suddenly turned sideways and slashed. Swish! The blade, which was filled with battle energy, sliced a disgusting creature into two. Green blood splattered everywhere, and there was a corrosive, sizzling sound. Devil Hound. William could not help but unsheath his short sword. He knew what he was going to face next. The next moment, dozens of ferocious-looking black devil hounds pounced from all directions. They were agile and unafraid of death. Whether it was their claws or teeth, they were extremely useful weapons. More importantly, their blood was highly corrosive. For an ordinary NPC, as long as they came into contact with it, it would cause continuous corrosive damage. William did not wait for his death. He activated his blue battle energy shield and charged forward. He was like a giant bear pouncing on the devil hounds. The 5 devil hounds in front of him felt as if they had hit a mountain head-on, and they were all sent flying. When the green blood came into contact with the Dochi, only a sizzling, roasting sound could be heard. It was completely unable to break the shield. On the other hand, the devil hounds were very aggressive. They stood up again after falling to the ground and pounced on their companions in a frenzy. They had a murderous intent to tear their enemies into pieces. William kept retreating until he reached the wall. When he had nowhere else to retreat, he saw more than 10 devil hounds swarming towards him. He stomped hard on the wall, and his body spun in midair. An arrow condensed from pure thunder fighting energy shot out. In the next moment, that arrow turned into dozens of arrows. It was like a rain of thunder arrows. In an instant, the tens of devil hounds were shot to death. At the same time, the lightning bow came with a skill, thunder arrow rain. It triggered the set attribute, chain lightning. Crackle. Electric currents filled the surface of the devil hounds. The powerful thunder damage caused them to convulse. It was as if they were dancing in the footsteps of the devil. In a short period of time, the bodies of the devil hounds were completely turned into mush. After all, thunder was very effective against dark creatures. It was only slightly weaker than holy light. As the thunder flashed, the sometimes strong and sometimes weak lightning shone on groups of dark creatures. There were death knights, skeleton warriors, and disgusting dark creatures. Under the faint light, they gradually moved towards William. Then, the last ray of lightning dimmed. The area 10 meters around William was surrounded by dark creatures. Interesting, but is that all? William raised his eyebrows. He did not believe that Mucka Red only had this trick up his sleeves. Mucka Red, who was dressed in a black robe, looked at William. He waved his hand, and countless dense black gas drilled out from his sleeves and surged into the bodies of the dark creatures. In a short period of time, all the dark creatures became much larger in the next moment. William decided not to force the situation, because the dark creatures in front of him, which were only at the beginner level, had increased by more than 5 levels. Then, groups of dark creatures roared crazily and surged towards William like a torrent. He did not have any other options. After William released a ray of sword energy, he was pinned down by a large group of dark creatures. Many dark creatures stretched out their evil hands, mouths full of sharp teeth, and even huge swords. They attacked William crazily. The battle energy shield was instantly destroyed. Even when William curled up his body and covered his head with both hands, his health points continued to drop rapidly. He finally used his counterattack skill. Bang! An invisible shock wave exploded from his body. Hundreds of dark creatures were sent flying into the air, while dozens of dark creatures turned to ash and disappeared in the air. Mucka Red widened his eyes when he saw this scene. He could not help but curse. What the F***CK? He's a soul mage. Wasn't he a ranger? And why is he so resilient? He even knows soul magic? As a dark warlock, he had done some research on souls. Even though he was not a soul mage, he had learned a few important soul skills. Soul shock wave. With your body as the center, you will create a soul shock wave. It will cause 350 plus 270% X intelligence damage to enemies within a radius of 12 meters. It will also cause a 6 to 8 meter knockback effect. There is a 37% chance of causing a stun for 5 seconds. It did not seem like much damage, but the key point was that the mutual restraint in the game was not something that could be proven by the data. William could endure until all the dark creatures attacked him. Only then could the soul shock wave cause the greatest area of effect damage. This was because dark creatures had no resistance to soul damage, especially the skeleton soldiers with Willow, the wisp in their heads, and the ordinary dark knights. They were creatures that had died and resurrected. Their soul energy was extremely weak. Against soul damage, it was like throwing a snowball into a pot of boiling oil. It would melt instantly. In conclusion, if William had enough soul attack skills, he could have pushed them to the toilet bowl and fed them **T. But he did not, so he could only be pushed down. Chapter 95. William did not believe that there was an endless supply of dark creatures here. He wanted to charge out of the illusory array. He was covered in blood and had less than 10,000 health points. His shiny armor was full of holes, and its durability was dropping rapidly. If he continued to fight, he would have to charge out for the sake of his golden armor. I don't believe that I can't kill you. Mucka Red waved his hand again, and hundreds of dark creatures surged out. This time, there were not only dark creatures, but also a middle-level devil with Grandmaster bloodline. Level 55, William raised his eyebrows. The demon had a curved black horn on top of his head, giving him the feeling of a minotaur. His skin was dark and textured, and he had a pair of bat-like wings on his back. Scars covered the surface of his body, which meant that he was a veteran tank who had been through hundreds of battles in the Dark World and had been beaten up countless times. William looked at the devil with the black weapon in his hand. He did not care about the attacks from the other creatures. He endured the damage and charged forward. Both parties collided in an instant. Thunder battle energy and dark energy clashed, forming a shockwave that was visible to the naked eye. With just one collision, the ground beneath their feet sank. Streaks of air blades scratched the ground, leaving deep marks. The battlefield between the two of them became a high-end one. Some low-level dark creatures could not even get close. Elf, submit to me and return to the darkness. You will obtain greater power. A deep voice reverberated throughout the valley. The devil was an intelligent creature. He had been summoned by Mucker Red, so he naturally had to help him do some things. But this devil was not Mucker Red's slave, so he did not want to fight to the death. If possible, he did not mind taking in this little brother and tricking William into following him into the underground world. Then, he would eat William to increase his strength. William pointed his longsword at him. "Devil, submit to me and return to the light. You will obtain weaker power." The devil waved his weapon angrily. The longsword was filled with black curses, and it whizzed towards William. The latter retreated quickly, and the thunder slashed continuously. The sword energy that was like a full moon streaked across the sky. In an instant, it cut through the dark energy and continuously slashed at the devil's body. Pom, pom, pom. The dark battle energy shield was broken. Hideous wounds and arcs of electricity appeared on the demon's body, but he shook his head nonchalantly and charged forward again. The two of them collided again and again, attacking again and again. The earth trembled, and the flames from both sides formed a whistling whirlwind. This was a battle between skills and supernatural power. This was a battle between movement techniques and attack range. William's strength was indeed not a match for the devil, but he was more like a dancer walking on the tip of a knife. Even if both of his feet were pierced into a bloody mess, he would not die. He was right. The demons did have the upper hand in the beginning, but as time passed, he looked at William in shock and anger. William's body was covered in blood and wounds. Basically, other than his head, there was not a single part of his body that was unharmed. But William did not die. He was always active in his sight. It really gave the demons a feeling that the enemy could not be killed or broken. The prince's understanding of the demons was far better than the demons' understanding of him. William had the potential of a legendary bloodline and the attributes of a gold-colored equipment set. His health points were not lower than this meat shield. When he was sent flying, he took the opportunity to sacrifice a dark creature and instantly recovered 30% of his health points. He knew that as long as he could protect his vital parts, there was nothing to be afraid of. Anyway, he could still fight for another 10 minutes. But the same could not be said for the devil, who was also covered in wounds. Muckared looked at the devil, who was gradually losing the upper hand. He was a little surprised. Although the devil that he had summoned was not considered a trump card, it could not even defeat a 16-year-old half-elf ranger. Wasn't it a little too weak? Is there a problem with my summoning runes? Or was there something wrong with the sacrifice? That's not right. The aura of the devil is very strong. Muckared did not dare to delay any longer. He was sure that the remaining two people had escaped from the illusion and were waiting for an opportunity to attack. Why? The devil's chest had been pierced by a sword. The blood on the wound had been scorched by the lightning, but it was still flickering with electricity, causing him injuries from time to time. As a proud warrior among the devils, he did not expect that he would lose to a ranger in close combat. William could not be bothered to explain to the devil. How could a normal devil understand the advantage of a legendary hidden occupation? If you fall behind, you'll be beaten. Accept the judgment of justice. However, the devil who was about to fall suddenly laughed coldly. He secretly clenched his left hand and hammered William's face. It was as if a grenade had exploded in the room. William was hit head-on, but he activated his battle energy shield and neutralized the critical damage. William's body was inevitably severely injured. His nose was fractured, and there was a huge bloody hole on his face. It was still burning with black energy, but the thunder sword in his hand had pierced through the devil's neck. The devil, who was already on the verge of death, widened his eyes. He looked at William in disbelief. It was hard to believe that an elf who loved to look good could do this. William pulled out his longsword, and the devil's corpse fell to the ground. He had the data panel, so he did not mind using the method of exchanging blows to kill this devil, because he had more important things to do. You have killed a level 53 middle-level Grandmaster Devil. You have obtained 63,000 experience points. You have killed a target that is 7 levels higher than you. You have obtained an additional 150% experience points, 31,500 experience points. You have obtained a total of 94,500 experience points. William glanced at the information. He had leveled up again, 47. He reached out and extinguished the black flames on his face. Then, he removed the rotten flesh on his face, revealing his white bones. Oh, these were his teeth at this moment. He suddenly turned his head to look at the other dark creatures. As if he was teasing a dog, he lifted the 2-meter-tall devil's corpse with one hand and pretended to throw it far away. Do you want to eat it? A large group of dark creatures blinked their red eyes. William raised his eyebrows and asked again, "Do you want to eat it?" The dark creatures were a little impatient. They blinked their eyes again. William suddenly threw the corpse away. A group of dark creatures rushed over, but the corpse was still in his hand. Fortunately, William felt that something was wrong. He saw that the group of puppies had developed a rebellious nature. He immediately threw the devil's corpse far away. The group of dark creatures instantly pounced on the devil's corpse. Even the dark creatures that were hiding in the dark did the same. They had completely forgotten about Mucka Red's orders. Mucka Red, today is the anniversary of your death. William did not care about the wound on his face and grinned. He took out a scroll from his bosom and held it up high. Buzz! A dazzling white light bloomed from William's hand. All of a sudden, the glass-like mirrors shattered into pieces. The entire valley appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It even shot up to the sky. Holy Light Tranquility Spell. This spell was specially used in the Cave Instance Dungeon. William did not have the intention to meet Mucka Red, but he had cleared the cave many times. He knew that there would always be illusions and magic in the cave. At the same time, there would also be a dense fog that blocked one's vision. Although he felt that the probability of encountering an illusion was very low, being cautious was his strength. Hence, William asked Moses to create an enhanced Holy Light Tranquility spell scroll for him. Although he felt that the probability of encountering an illusion was very low, being cautious was his strength. Hence, William asked Moses to create an enhanced Holy Light Tranquility spell scroll for him. His original intention was that even if he could not encounter an illusion, he could use it as a signal flare for the Legion to launch an attack. But who would have thought that he would encounter an illusion? Mucka Red's face turned green. Casa, who had been paying attention to the periphery of the valley, ran over in a panic. This is bad. The hiding place of the orcs has been discovered. They have started a war with the Dawn army. Damn those orcs. Can't they just bear with it? Don't these fools know that the battlefield should be in the valley? Mucka Red shouted a few times. He wanted to say something, but he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He did not expect those foolish orcs to be of any help. Then he glared at William fiercely. Then he turned and walked into the devil's den. Casa followed closely behind. When they arrived at the altar that was filled with the smell of blood, Mucka Red took off his hood and revealed a sinister and pale smile. His glowing green eyes gradually turned to look at Casa. Men have to rely on themselves. Teacher, no. Teacher, don't do it. Why don't you? The epic Dark Warlock Casa had died with 3 chapters. Chapter 96. When Lautner and Eric discovered the abnormality, they were nervous, but they did not make any mistakes. At the same time, both of them went into stealth mode. One was a Devil Hunter Ranger, while the other was a Shadow Ranger. What was the occupation of a Devil Hunter Ranger? It was a professional hunter that targeted dark creatures. It could be said that all of Lautner's skills had a special effect on dark creatures. Especially with Lautner's occupation, it meant that he had to enter the Devil's Den for special training and experience. He was no stranger to the possible situations that could occur in the Devil's Denver. In the instant that the 2 darkness beasts pounced on him, he actually disappeared without a trace with a single leap. As for Eric, as a Shadow Ranger, he was a high-explosive archer who hid in the dark. He was a long-range killer in the magic fantasy era. It was the instinct of dark creatures to live in the dark. But Eric also had some skills. When he saw 2 blood-red eyes, he brazenly squatted down in the grass and disappeared. Why did both of them have such skills? Because the creators of these occupations had a deep understanding of a principle. Only by surviving until the end could they achieve true victory. When Mucku Red saw this scene from outside the illusion, his green eyes flashed nonstop. It was as if he was going blind. William was the only one left in the illusion. His body was burning with blue battle energy, and he looked mighty and domineering. It was not that he did not want to survive, but he did not have skills. As more and more dark creatures appeared, pairs of blood-red eyes stared at William. The city lord knew that he had nowhere to retreat, so he took large strides forward. William did not have any special stealth skills, but he had a way to deal with illusions. He could pierce through them, get lost. When William saw the dark creatures suddenly attacking, a long and narrow thunder, sword energy, swept across. Wherever the sword energy passed, most of the dark creatures were sliced in half. The halves of the corpses were still flashing with electric arcs, illuminating their original bodies. A group of skeleton soldiers? Aren't they underestimating me? William was about to grin when he suddenly turned sideways and slashed. Swish! The blade, which was filled with battle energy, sliced a disgusting creature into two. Green blood splattered everywhere, and there was a corrosive, sizzling sound. Devil Hound. William could not help but unsheath his short sword. He knew what he was going to face next. The next moment, dozens of ferocious-looking black devil hounds pounced from all directions. They were agile and unafraid of death. Whether it was their claws or teeth, they were extremely useful weapons. More importantly, their blood was highly corrosive. For an ordinary NPC, as long as they came into contact with it, it would cause continuous corrosive damage. William did not wait for his death. He activated his blue battle energy shield and charged forward. He was like a giant bear pouncing on the devil hounds. The 5 devil hounds in front of him felt as if they had hit a mountain head-on, and they were all sent flying. When the green blood came into contact with the doe chi, only a sizzling, roasting sound could be heard. It was completely unable to break the shield. On the other hand, the devil hounds were very aggressive. They stood up again after falling to the ground and pounced on their companions in a frenzy. They had a murderous intent to tear their enemies into pieces. William kept retreating until he reached the wall. When he had nowhere else to retreat, he saw more than 10 devil hounds swarming towards him. He stomped hard on the wall, and his body spun in midair. An arrow condensed from pure thunder fighting energy shot out. In the next moment, that arrow turned into dozens of arrows. It was like a rain of thunder arrows. In an instant, the tens of devil hounds were shot to death. At the same time, the lightning bow came with a skill, thunder arrow rain. It triggered the set attribute, chain lightning. Crackle. Electric currents filled the surface of the devil hounds. The powerful thunder damage caused them to convulse. It was as if they were dancing in the footsteps of the devil. In a short period of time, the bodies of the devil hounds were completely turned into mush. After all, thunder was very effective against dark creatures. It was only slightly weaker than holy light. As the thunder flashed, the sometimes strong and sometimes weak lightning shone on groups of dark creatures. There were death knights, skeleton warriors, and disgusting dark creatures. Under the faint light, they gradually moved towards William. Then, the last ray of lightning dimmed. The area 10 meters around William was surrounded by dark creatures. Interesting, but is that all? William raised his eyebrows. He did not believe that Mucku Red only had this trick up his sleeves. Mucku Red, who was dressed in a black robe, looked at William. He waved his hand, and countless dense black gas drilled out from his sleeves and surged into the bodies of the dark creatures. In a short period of time, all the dark creatures became much larger in the next moment. William decided not to force the situation, because the dark creatures in front of him, which were only at the beginner level, had increased by more than 5 levels. Then, groups of dark creatures roared crazily and surged towards William like a torrent. He did not have any other options. After William released a ray of sword energy, he was pinned down by a large group of dark creatures. Many dark creatures extended their evil hands, mouths full of sharp teeth, and even large swords. They attacked William crazily. The battle energy shield was instantly destroyed, Even when William curled up his body and covered his head with both hands, his health points continued to drop rapidly. He finally used his counterattack skill. Bang! An invisible shock wave exploded from his body. Hundreds of dark creatures were sent flying into the air, while dozens of dark creatures turned to ash and disappeared in the air. Muku Red widened his eyes when he saw this scene. He could not help but curse. What the F***CK? He's a soul mage. Wasn't he a ranger? And why is he so resilient? He even knows soul magic? As a dark warlock, he had done some research on the soul. Even though he was not a specialized soul mage, he had learned a few important soul skills. Soul shock wave. With your body as the center, you will create a soul shock wave. It will cause 350 plus 270% X intelligence damage to enemies within a radius of 12 meters. It will also cause a 6 to 8 meter knockback effect and a 37% chance of causing a stun for 5 seconds. It did not seem like much damage, but the key point was that the mutual restraint in the game was not something that could be proven by the data. William could endure until all the dark creatures attacked him. Only then could the soul shock wave cause the greatest area of effect damage. This was because dark creatures had no resistance to soul damage, especially the skeleton soldiers with Willow, the wisp in their heads, and the ordinary dark knights. There were creatures that had died and resurrected. Their soul energy was extremely weak. Against soul damage, it was like throwing a snowball into a pot of boiling oil. It would melt instantly. In conclusion, if William had enough soul attack skills, he could have pushed them to the toilet bowl and fed them *T. But he did not, so he could only be pushed down. Chapter 97. William did not believe that there was an endless supply of dark creatures here. He wanted to charge out of the illusory array. He was covered in blood and had less than 10,000 health points. His shiny armor was full of holes, and its durability was dropping rapidly. If he continued to fight, he would have to charge out for the sake of his golden armor. I don't believe that I can't kill you. Muku Red waved his hand again, and hundreds of dark creatures surged out. This time, there were not only dark creatures, but also a middle-level devil with Grandmaster bloodline. Level 55. William raised his eyebrows. The demon had a curved black horn on top of his head, giving him the feeling of a minotaur. His skin was dark and textured, and he had a pair of bat-like wings on his back. Scars covered the surface of his body, which meant that he was a veteran tank who had been through hundreds of battles in the dark world and had been beaten up countless times. William looked at the devil with the black weapon in his hand. He did not care about the attacks from the other creatures. He endured the damage and charged forward. Both parties collided in an instant. Thunder battle energy and dark energy clashed, forming a shockwave that was visible to the naked eye. With just one collision, the ground beneath their feet sank. Streaks of air blades scratched the ground, leaving deep marks. The battlefield between the two of them became a high-end one. Some low-level dark creatures could not even get close. Elf, submit to me and return to the darkness. You will obtain greater power. A deep voice reverberated throughout the valley. The devil was an intelligent creature. He had been summoned by Muku Red, so he naturally had to help him do some things. But this devil was not Muku Red's slave, so he did not want to fight to the death. If possible, he did not mind taking in this little brother and tricking William into following him into the underground world. Then, he would eat William to increase his strength. William pointed his longsword at him. Devil, submit to me and return to the light. You will obtain weaker power. The devil waved his weapon angrily. The longsword was filled with black curses, and it whizzed towards William. The latter retreated quickly, and the thunder slashed continuously. The sword energy that was like a full moon streaked across the sky. In an instant, it cut through the dark energy and continuously slashed at the devil's body. Pom, pom, pom. The dark battle energy shield was broken. Hideous wounds and arcs of electricity appeared on the demon's body, but he shook his head nonchalantly and charged forward again. The two of them collided again and again, attacking again and again. The earth trembled, and the flames from both sides formed a whistling whirlwind. This was a battle between skills and supernatural power. This was a battle between movement techniques and attack range. William's strength was indeed not a match for the devil, but he was more like a dancer walking on the tip of a knife. Even if both his feet were pierced into a bloody mess, he still did not die. He was right. The demons did have the upper hand in the beginning. But as time passed, he looked at William in shock and anger. William's body was covered in blood and wounds. Basically, other than his head, there was not a single part of his body that was unharmed. But William did not die. He was always active in his sight. It really gave the demons a feeling that the enemy could not be killed or broken. The prince's understanding of the demons was far better than the demons' understanding of him. William had the potential of a legendary bloodline and the attributes of a gold-colored equipment set. His health points were not lower than this meat shield. When he was sent flying, he took the opportunity to sacrifice a dark creature and instantly recovered 30% of his health points. He knew that as long as he could protect his vital parts, there was nothing to be afraid of. Anyway, he could still fight for another 10 minutes. But the same could not be said for the demon, who was also covered in wounds. Mucka Red looked at the demon, who was gradually losing the upper hand. He was a little surprised. Although the demon that he had summoned was not considered a trump card, it could not even defeat a 16-year-old half-elf ranger. Wasn't a little too weak? Is there a problem with my summoning runes? Or was there something wrong with the sacrifice? That's not right. The aura of the demon is very strong. Mucka Red did not dare to delay any longer. He was sure that the remaining 2 people had escaped from the illusion and were waiting for an opportunity to attack. Why? The demon's chest had been pierced by a sword. The blood on the wound had been scorched by the lightning, but it was still flickering with electricity, causing him injuries from time to time. As a proud warrior among the demons, he did not expect that he would lose to a ranger in close combat. William could not be bothered to explain to the demon. How could a normal demon understand the advantage of a legendary hidden occupation? If you fall behind, you will be beaten. Accept the judgment of justice. However, the demon who was about to fall suddenly laughed coldly. He secretly clenched his left hand and hammered William's face. It was as if a grenade had exploded in the room. William was hit head-on, but he activated his battle energy shield and neutralized the critical damage. William's body was inevitably severely injured. His nose was fractured, and there was a huge bloody hole on his face that was burning with black energy. But the thunder sword in his hand had already pierced through the demon's neck. The demon, who was already on the verge of death, widened his eyes. He looked at William in disbelief. It was hard to believe that this was something that an elf who loved to look good could do. William pulled out his long sword, and the demon's corpse fell to the ground. He had the data panel, so he did not mind using the method of exchanging blows to kill this demon, because he had more important things to do. You have killed a level 53 middle-level Grandmaster Devil. You have obtained 63,000 experience points. You have killed a target that is 7 levels higher than you. You have obtained an additional 150% experience points, 31,500 experience points. You have obtained a total of 94,500 experience points. William glanced at the information. He had leveled up again 47. He reached out and extinguished the black flames on his face. Then, he removed the rotten flesh on his face, revealing his white bones. Oh, these were his teeth. At this moment, he suddenly turned his head to look at the other dark creatures. As if he was teasing a dog, he lifted the 2-meter-tall demon's corpse with one hand and pretended to throw it far away. Do you want to eat it? A large group of dark creatures blinked their red eyes. William raised his eyebrows and asked again, "Do you want to eat it?" The dark creatures were a little impatient. They blinked their eyes again. William suddenly threw the corpse away. A group of dark creatures rushed over, but the corpse was still in his hand. Fortunately, William felt that something was wrong. He saw that the group of puppies had developed a rebellious nature. He immediately threw the devil's corpse far away. The group of dark creatures instantly pounced on the devil's corpse. Even the dark creatures hidden in the dark did the same. They had completely forgotten about Mucka Red's orders. Mucka Red, Today is the anniversary of your death." William did not care about the wound on his face and grinned. He took out a scroll from his bosom and held it up high. Buzz! A dazzling white light bloomed from William's hand. All of a sudden, the glass-like mirrors shattered into pieces. The entire valley appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It even shot up to the sky, holy light tranquility magic. It was a strengthened version of the magic to break the illusion and fog. This magic was specially used in the Cave Instance Dungeon. William did not have the intention to meet Mucka Red, but he had cleared the caves many times. He knew that there would always be illusions and magic in the caves. At the same time, there would also be fog that blocked one's vision. Although he felt that the probability of encountering an illusion was very low, being cautious was his strength. Thus, William asked Moses to create a strengthened version of the Holy Light Tranquility Magic Scroll for him. His original intention was that even if he could not encounter an illusion, he could use it as a signal flare for the Legion to launch an all-out attack. But who would have thought that he would encounter an illusion? Mucka Red's face turned green. Casa, who had been paying attention to the periphery of the valley, ran over in a panic. "This is bad. The hiding place of the orcs has been discovered. They have started fighting with the Dawn Army. Damn those orcs. Can't they just bear with it? Don't these fools know that the battlefield should be in the valley?" Mucka Red shouted a few times. He wanted to say something, but he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He did not expect those foolish orcs to be of any help. Then he glared at William fiercely. Then he turned and walked into the Devil's Den. Casa followed closely behind him. When they arrived at the altar that was filled with the smell of blood, Mucka Red took off his hood and revealed a sinister and pale smile. His glowing green eyes turned to look at Casa. "Men have to rely on themselves. Teacher, no, teacher, don't do it. Why don't you?" The epic dark warlock, Casa, had died. Chapter 98. Andadana died with his sword in his mouth. His soul could not rest in peace. It was purified by the priests and turned into ashes in the holy light. His soul did not even have the chance to be resurrected. William obtained tens of thousands of experience points again. It was a pity that there were too many of them. Even the trolls were killed. The rewards were not as good as if he had killed the devils alone. The battle at the Devil's Den finally came to an end. The remaining 2,000 undead and dark knights did not even have the chance to leave the Devil's Den. William trapped them in a corner and beat them up. Mucka Red is really smart. He knew that he was not a match for Andadana, so he lured this fool out to attract the firepower while he escaped. William was still worried that he did not manage to kill Mucka Red, because Mucka Red was a much bigger threat than Andadana. Devils like Andadana, who had the advantage of bloodline, were not as smart as low-level devils, because they were the children of the Devil Lord. Each of them had a large piece of land. Thousands of devils, skeletons, and dark knights were loyal to them. If low-level devils wanted to be a bootlicker, they had to compete with each other. But Andadana did not have to. The land of the Dark World was very vast. He did not need to compete with his brothers for power. He only needed to stay quietly in his own den, and there would be many delicacies for him to enjoy. They would often obtain the offerings of mages, priests, and warlocks. After all, Andadana and his companions were too powerful. Ordinary offerings couldn't tempt him at all, so most of the offerings offered to him were randomly distributed by Andromalius to his children. But Mucka Red was different. This dark warlock was cunning, sinister, and emotionless. He would do anything to achieve his goals. He could make use of anyone. In particular, he had prepared many tricks this time. The key was Altaic's Orc Legion. If he really attacked, most of the Dawn Army would perish here. When everyone left the misty valley, a dazzling white light shone from the valley. Boom! Half of the misty valley was blown away. Soil, trees, and boulders that weighed thousands of kilograms flew into the air. The ground trembled, and it gave people a sense of fear. The Dawn Army knew that William wanted to destroy the Devil's Denver. But most people did not know what William had used to create such a huge explosion. The emissary could not help but think of something. But before William could glance at him, he quickly patted William's arm indicating that he did not know anything. He and his subordinates were blind and deaf. They had come to the Devil's Den to get some soy sauce from the dark world. The messenger of the Temple of Light decisively chose not to report it. Regardless of whether the City of Dawn had wood or magical crystals, it had nothing to do with him. The Light Divine Palace did not dare to snatch it openly. Even if he secretly obtained information about the location of the magical energy crystals, what benefits could a mere messenger like him obtain? Consolation prize? The emissary of the temple in a city was more like a local official. He controlled the temple knights and priests in the area and preached the faith of the God of Light in the city. However, he still had to maintain a good relationship with the local city lord. Otherwise, he would definitely be finished. Moreover, the temple messenger knew very well that William was a very strong lord. If he wanted to survive here, he had to follow William. Otherwise, if he dared to wholeheartedly serve the Temple of Light, he would die early. Hidden mission, territory crisis, demonic den appears, mission details, completed, completion, 86%, reward, 111,800, reward, Misty Valley Instance Dungeon Crystal. William looked at the white crystal in his hand. His eyes were filled with joy. Instance Dungeon Crystal? In this case, I can bring the crystal to the City of Dawn. The players do not need to travel to the map and can directly enter the instance dungeon. The most important thing is that I finally have a source of experience. As early as the game's closed beta, William discovered a problem. When the players accepted his mission, the players could obtain experience, but he could not. However, he was not too worried at that time, because he knew that the world of gods had instance dungeon crystals. Originally, there were no instance dungeons in the gods continent. At least before the game's closed beta, there were no instance dungeons. But after the game's open beta, some ancient battlefields, devil's dens, and even recent battles could be found with instance dungeon crystals. In other words, everything that NPCs had experienced was completely integrated into the instance dungeon crystal. After the players found the instance dungeon crystal, they had a hand over some money, tools, and even experience to enter the instance dungeon to fight monsters. In short, there were two types of instance dungeon crystals. They could be moved and could not be moved. The instance dungeon crystal that could not be moved was huge, and it would definitely exist in maps where battles had taken place, so it would be easy to find. For example, the instance dungeon crystal that William had obtained could be moved. Because he was the main NPC in this instance dungeon, the instance dungeon crystal was a reward for him as a kind of memoir. It was similar to a dungeon crystal that could not be moved. This was because there were too many important NPCs inside, so it could not be shared with everyone. All in all, it was more like a reward from the heavens. William suddenly obtained his own instance dungeon crystal. Not only was this an important EXP harvesting machine for him, but it was also a blessing for the players. After all, they could enter the dungeon without having to traverse the map. How awesome was that? Did other NPCs have this ability? There were, but there were very few NPCs who would take the initiative to initiate an army-level dungeon and also challenge various kinds of NPCs, so they were often unable to obtain dungeon crystals. After all, when the dungeon crystal was given to an NPC, it was more like a reward for recalling battle experience. Could other instance dungeons be this cheap? Definitely not. The price to open a wild instance dungeon crystal was usually very high. As for the instance dungeon crystals of the NPCs, when they discovered that they were beneficial to the players, they would charge a lot for them. However, William only intended to charge experience for the entrance fee of the Misty Valley Instance Dungeon Crystal. He did not want any gold coins or items. Of course, this depended on the situation. What if he was short of money? In any case, when he had become a legendary in his previous life, he had needed the feathers of a phoenix to enter a top-level instance dungeon. Wasn't this the monkey's grandfather, a baboon? He could not even help to level up. Right now, the instance dungeon in his hand could be divided into 4 levels. For example, in the normal level, the players would not encounter any sneak attacks from the Orc Army, Black Warlock boss, or Devil boss. The player's mission was probably to kill a few dark creatures in the Devil's Den. As for the difficult level, there might be some small boss. Half of the difficult level was the epic level. After that was the legendary level. If it was really a legendary instance dungeon, then that was the situation that William was facing now. If the players had not entered the intermediate level and did not have a team of thousands of people, they would undoubtedly be courting death if they entered. It was unknown how many times the players in the future would have to explore the legendary instance dungeon before they could defeat it. After all, the final boss was a level 69 epic devil. Even though he could not survive for more than one chapter, he had to face many bosses in the City of Dawn. When the game was an open beta, Holy Light Tranquility Scrolls, items that could counter darkness attributes, and potions would all be sold like hotcakes. Of course, occupations like temple knights and priests would also be in high demand. The most important thing is that as an NPC, I will definitely appear in the instance dungeon. The players will also be able to admire my bravery at close range. William touched his face. His injuries had recovered. His frightening appearance when he had cracked his teeth had also disappeared. His other confidants did not know what was going on, but they did not dare to say much. Only Lautner thought that William had secretly eaten the life potion and not given it to him. It's a pity that I didn't get an instance dungeon crystal after fighting so many orc tribes alone. William also understood that the combat level was too low. But this also proved that it was very difficult to obtain instance dungeon crystals. But after obtaining instance dungeon crystals, there were simply too many benefits. For example, the instance dungeon crystal in the Misty Valley could drop many dark materials and even weapons and equipment. The nameless devil that William had single-handedly killed had dropped a golden quality cursed weapon. In addition, the devil's body could also be used as materials. With their coarse skin and thick flesh, they could all be used as materials to make inner armor. But William had a big family business, so he did not care. He did not even care about Dana's body, let alone the devil's belongings. What did Dana drop? William could not help but sigh as he looked at the pitch-black ring on his hand. I didn't expect to obtain a space treasure from a devil. This young man did not even have the chance to use the space treasure. How pitiful. Chapter 99. The space inside the ring was very small. It had a length, width, and height of 5 meters. There were 30 dark magic crystals, 13,000 gold coins, and an epic-level middle-level sword. There was nothing else. Poor. William picked up the dark attribute sword and waved it a few times. It was a little heavy, and the key point was that it was quite long. It was not easy to wield. After all, devils were burly and muscular, and most of them were more than 2 meters tall. Although this middle-level sword was of epic quality, its attributes and attack power were very good. But it was not very useful to William because he did not like to use it. Eric and Alec, who were his subordinates, practiced dark battle energy, but they were not warriors. Of course, for ordinary middle-level professionals, they did not care about other things. Epic. It was good enough that it was useful. It did not matter if the battle energy attribute was compatible or not. But it's still a treasure. I'll keep it first and think about it later. William stuffed the 2-meter-long sword into the space ring. He wasn't too optimistic about professionals who cultivated darkness-attributed chi, just like those dark magi. Because other than players, any NPCs who practiced dark battle energy, magic, had to devote themselves to the darkness. They had to understand, analyze, and explore the darkness. Only in this way could the professionals with dark attributes level up and break through. But when they were addicted to darkness, they inevitably wanted to understand the dark world. Because everyone knew that the dark world of the underground abyss had the purest darkness. If they wanted to become a true expert, they had to understand the dark world. Most of the dark practitioners believed that they had a strong will and would not be tempted by the darkness. So they had an insight into those dark creatures and even devils, trying to find an opportunity to break through from them. But when the NPCs were addicted to the dark attribute, and even when they used various methods to contact the dark world, they would naturally be targeted by the devils. The devils would use many methods to tempt humans, turning them into the purest believers of darkness. In the long run, many people would become the representatives of the dark world. Just like Mucka Red, in order to become stronger, He gave up his human identity and chose to use all sorts of evil means to please the demons. The purpose of the devils was not only to obtain sacrifices for themselves, but also to invade the light world in the long run. For the demons, this was something that they had been planning for since the last era, and they had already taken action. It had to be said, the results of that battle were quite good. The core power of the entire dark world was the demon race. They were the vanguard army that invaded the gods' continent. That dark invasion war lasted for hundreds of years. That time, the darkness invasion had caused the elves, who were the rulers of the gods' continent, to decline. In the end, they had to pay the price of destroying the gods' continent. The elven clan had left the continent, and the humans had become the main characters of the new era. The Nephilim clan had been completely defeated, and the dark portal had been destroyed forever. Hence, they did not even have the chance to return to the dark world. They could only live in the gods' continent forever. Demons, who were originally on par with demons, did not have a good life in the world of light. This was because they were originally dark creatures, but in order to adapt to the world of light, they constantly lowered their bloodline. In other words, the higher the bloodline of a dark creature, the more they could not stand the world of light unless this world also fell into darkness. Currently, there were very few devils. In the entire legendary continent, there were only about 3 million devils. They hid in desolate and remote areas of ice and snow, or in rainforests and swamps that even the elves did not like to live in. They even hid in the depths of some caves and did not see the light of day. They did not even have the treatment of orcs. Although on the legendary continent, there were some devils who had built cities in the desolate areas, the geographical location they occupied was too poor and resources were very scarce. In particular, the legendary continent was so big and many resources had not been developed in the human countries. How could they waste their military power to attack the cities of the demon race? Dark magic crystals? It's used to practice dark battle energy, magic. It's equivalent to double experience pills. It's very expensive. Let's see if there's a chance to sell it. William also knew that there was a palace of darkness in his territory. The dark warriors and dark warlocks, they would be interested in this item. After all, no one could choose to awaken an attribute. Some people had awakened the dark attribute. This could not be helped as long as they did not cross the bottom line of the humans. Some dark warlocks were only good at dark magic, and not all of them were evil great demon kings. The city of Dawn welcomed a great victory. When the Dawn army returned to the city, they welcomed the cheers of tens of thousands of people. Before leading the army into battle, William had deliberately brainwashed and promoted a wave of propaganda. He said that there was a devil's den near the city. If the devil's den was not destroyed in advance, it would produce endless devils and dark creatures. Then, the entire city of Dawn would not be peaceful. In this way, the city of Dawn could be considered to have a good reason to fight. Anyway, every time he attacked other tribes, he would say the same thing. He would use the excuse that they would be a threat to the city of Dawn, but don't say it. It was quite effective. Most of the commoners did not like to use their brains. Most of them were idiots. Of course, there were smart people, but they often chose not to speak. The Dawn army returned victorious, so they naturally had to reward the three armies. Leading the army into battle, they wasted food and money. Now that they were fighting at close range, they did not need much food, but they did not lack money. A unique reward ceremony was officially held. All the warriors, mercenaries, mages, and even the temple knights and pastors of the Temple of Light stood neatly in the central square. William did not mind using a small amount of money to win over the hearts of the people of the Temple of Light. The nearby streets, houses, and even roofs were filled with commoners who came to watch. Even the elves in the new district came to watch. There were 70,000 to 80,000 people gathered together. It had become a grand event in the city of Dawn. William wore broken armor, and the thunder longsword in his hand had lost its luster due to corrosion. He slowly walked out with heavy steps, and everyone's attention was drawn to him. The moment he walked up to the high platform in the square, he was welcomed with enthusiastic cheers. "Greetings, Lord William. "Greetings, son of glory. Greetings, son of the god of war." Resounding titles rang out from the mouths of the soldiers because they were witnesses. They had seen their lord's mighty figure, and they knew that he was a lord worthy of respect. Naturally, they were willing to submit to such an expert. William gently pressed his hand down. He did not give a long speech. Instead, he solemnly said in a deep voice, 330 warriors died in battle, 64 were seriously injured, and 1,351 were lightly injured. Since the establishment of the City of Dawn, this is the most tragic military casualty. Speaking of this, the warriors were a little sorrowful. Many of their comrades had died, and they felt sorry for them. Everyone knew the price of joining the army. There was no war without casualties. They had long been prepared to welcome the arrival of glory at any time. But some commoners could not stop crying. Besides a few orphans, most of the 330 warriors who had died in battle had families for a commoner's family. The death of an adult man who could provide for his family was akin to falling from light to darkness. William saw that the atmosphere was about right, and he bluntly said, "As warriors, they died a worthy death. They died with glory. They died for their families, and they died for the safety of the City of Dawn. I am unable to bring them back to life. But for those who died for the City of Dawn, I can let their glory live forever in this world." At this moment, he pointed to the south and shouted, "Below is a cliff. Below is the natural moat of the City of Dawn. That cliff is the gravestone of the warriors who died. Their names will be engraved here. Their glory will be looked up to by the people." At this moment, regardless of whether it was the warriors, mercenaries, commoners, elves, or dwarves, all of them held their breaths. What was this? This was true glory. To let a soldier who had died in battle be recorded forever and remembered by everyone. This was true glory. The soldiers of the Dawn Army and even the mercenaries were completely moved by William's words. Swearing loyalty to the City of Dawn was no longer a joke. Everyone who had died for the City of Dawn, including the mercenaries, the Temple Knights, and the priests of the Temple of Light. William pointed his sword to the sky and shouted again, "I, William Blackleaf, hereby promise that the soldiers who died in battle will enjoy eternal glory. The families of the soldiers who died in battle will be blessed by the City of Dawn forever. As long as I do not die, I will not let any of my people starve. My glory is your glory." At that moment, there were loud cheers. It was deafening. It reverberated in the sky. William's message window was flooded with affinity points. Chapter 100. However, this was not the end. After a few minutes of cheering, William announced a series of benefits. For example, the families of the deceased could go to the finance hall to receive 3 gold coins. The elderly could change to an easier job, such as repairing the flowers and trees on both sides of the street or cleaning the streets. When it was time for them to retire, the City of Dawn would be responsible for their retirement. The injured warriors would also be rewarded. It was the same for the warriors who were not injured. The ceremony lasted until evening. Then, William held a huge banquet. All the relatives and friends of the warriors could come to eat and drink. It was not a joke to reward the 3 armies. That day, he had spent as much as 5,000 gold coins. Fortunately, he had not suffered a loss this time. He had earned even more, especially since he had earned so much gold coins from the Iron Nation recently. There were already 150,000 gold coins in the treasury, which was enough for him to spend. But one should not just look at his expenditure. Every time William led his army to battle, regardless of victory or defeat, he would use money to motivate the soldiers to be courageous and brave. What did the people on a legendary continent live for? Or rather, what did the people of any world live for? It could be said that most people couldn't escape fame and fortune. Glory was fame. Money was benefits. William did not need other psychological counseling. As long as he understood these 2 words, he could sit on the throne of the Lord. Anyway, William made use of this opportunity to spend a lot of money. At the same time, he also won over the hearts of the people. When the spies in the city saw this scene, they actually yearned for it. Because the benefits of the City of Dawn were simply too good, some spies even had thoughts of joining the City of Dawn. But William did not know about these things. Even if he knew, he would not care too much. The leaves of the moon tree were covered with fluorescent light. At night, it was like a lighthouse. Every night, some elves who did not want to sleep would gather together to chat and drink. Annie stood in her hanging garden. She wore a white princess dress and stepped on the grass with her bare feet. She leaned on the pillar of the pavilion and looked at the dazzling central square. At this moment, the banquet had not ended. William did not leave. Instead, he was in high spirits as he competed with his subordinates in drinking. Even on the streets outside the central square, there were many commoners who brought tables with food and wine to join in the fun. "Your glory will last forever," Annie muttered to herself. She turned to look at Old Band, the space archmage beside her. "Grandpa Band, have you ever seen such a person? Was my father also like this when he was young?" Old Band looked at Annie with a pained expression. He shook his head and said, "When your father was young, I wasn't even born yet. However, what he did should be the first person in the legendary continent." "Why is it the first?" Annie asked curiously. "Wasn't it easy to remember the names of the soldiers who died in battle?" Old Band did not say it out loud, but he was deeply moved. It was not that no one had ever remembered the names of the soldiers who died in battle. Even if they did, so what? Sooner or later, it would be forgotten along with the decay of the books. Moreover, most emperors, kings, and lords would not care about a few dead soldiers. Those high and mighty experts would not pay much attention to the ants beneath their feet. For those who stood at the top of the pyramid, ordinary warriors were just tools in their hands that could be thrown away at any time. Was it difficult to remember the name of every tool? Only individual heroes had to be remembered. From the start, Old Band did not think highly of William. Of course, this was related to his half-elven bloodline. This was also related to William's inability to become a legitimate member of the Blackleaf royal family. However, he was only a royal mage. When he received the decree and understood that he had to leave with Princess Annie, he knew that he would be loyal to Annie from now on. He wanted to choose an outstanding partner for Annie. It was a pity that the Blackleaf elven princes who were capable were all a few hundred years old and married. As for those who were not married, not only was Annie annoyed, but he was also annoyed. William Blackleaf's constant appearances had attracted his attention. Back then, Old Band did not reject Annie's request to move here. He wanted to see how far the city of Dawn Lord could go. But he did not expect that this 16-year-old junior was not only resourceful and good at scheming, but also had outstanding bravery and combat power. William did not lack ambition. This could be seen from the development of the city of Dawn. He also did not lack kindness. This could be seen from the commoners' lives that were getting better. He also did not lack patience. The development of the city of Dawn seemed to be making great strides, but the foundation of the city was very stable. The loyalty of the citizens and their subordinates could be seen. He was also good at scheming. With just a few tricks, he could make the Dawn army pledge their loyalty to him. If he didn't die prematurely, he might have become Princess Annie's future partner. He could even use Princess Annie's identity to make him the new royal family of the Blackleaf Elves. He might even have a say in the succession of the old and new elven kings. Old Band thought very far ahead. He had to think too much, because the Moonlight Elven King had returned to the embrace of the World Tree. This was also the reason why Annie was not present. But Annie did not return to the tense Moonlight Forest because Old Band did not give her a chance to open the teleportation portal. Old Band could not understand why the Great King would pass the throne to the Crown Prince. Did he not know what the Crown Prince had awakened? Darkness. The Crown Prince cultivated dark battle energy and dark magic. Furthermore, did he forget that the Crown Prince had sacrificed some creatures to the devils in the Devil's Den? Did he think that the Crown Prince would not fall into darkness after a decade of silence? Did he think that the Crown Prince would return to the light? Old Band laughed bitterly in his heart. He knew that the Elven King had to pass the throne to the Crown Prince because of the Queen, but it was too dangerous. Furthermore, with the fall of the Elven King, Annie would lose her greatest backer in the future. Her status did not allow others to look down on her. The Moonlight Elves would not allow others to harm the little princess of the Moonlight Elves. But Annie would gradually be marginalized in the Moonlight Forest A daughter who married out was like water that had been spilled. Even the elves of the legendary continent understood this. Princess, rest early. I'll take my leave. Old Band looked at Annie, who had not shed a single tear. He did not say anything else and was about to leave. But Annie suddenly said, "The city of Dawn is good. I have high hopes for William. Besides the bodyguards, tell all the elves in the Moonlight Town that they can choose whether to join the army and fight for their lord." Old Band turned to look at Annie. He paused for a few seconds and nodded. "Okay, I'll announce this tomorrow. But isn't it too easy to fulfill William's wish so quickly?" "Nothing. I also want to see how far this little man will go." Her Royal Highness Princess Annie had never been alone. If she gave the order, more than half of her mother's tribe would follow. It wasn't that Annie didn't understand how dangerous her half-brother was, but she did not want her mother's tribe to cross half of the legendary continent to establish a foothold here. Marriage was fine. If hundreds of thousands of Moonlight Elves came, what would the Blackleaf Elves think? Would they fight for territory? Chapter 101. After more than half a year of hard work and development, William had finally ushered in the prosperity of the City of Dawn. Annie's order filled the elves of the Blue Moon Town with anticipation and gratitude. The 45,000 elves were once residents of the Blue Moon Town. Even though they had migrated to the City of Dawn, they were still estranged from the locals. Annie had given up her authority as the Lord. She allowed the other elves to integrate into the City of Dawn and had the opportunity to choose. It could be said that without Annie's order, no matter how good the City of Dawn was or how high William's status was, he would not be able to command the 40,000 elves. But now, these elves had been stamped with the seal of the City of Dawn. To the other elves, this order was something to be happy about. Whether it was the future of the City of Dawn or the charisma of the Lord, they were all looking forward to the future of working for him. William did not stand on ceremony. He posted the recruitment order, the Magic Guild's recruitment order, and all kinds of job applications. At the same time, he informed all the elves and human civilians that if they did not want to join the strict regular army, they could choose to join the relaxed Dawn mercenary team. Of course, the selection of personnel was still very strict. Every person had to be personally appointed by William. There was an endless stream of applicants for the large-scale recruitment of the City of Dawn. This news naturally reached the ears of the Iron Nation and the Black Lava Nation through their spies. The City of Dawn was constantly expanding, and the threat was getting bigger. The Iron Nation had some defensive measures, so they were not too worried. But the Black Lava Nation immediately issued an order to strictly prohibit the sale of slaves to the City of Dawn. Curry had become a count and a high-ranking noble who controlled thousands of elite soldiers. After many attempts, he discovered that all the main roads were controlled by the king's soldiers. It was difficult to bribe them. He could only helplessly transmit a message to William. The slave trade could not be carried out. Curry's backer did not dare to violate the laws of the dukedom. Otherwise, he would be targeted by his political enemies and be accused of treason. Curry's backer was the top noble of the Black Lava Nation, the famous Marquis Chris. He had an army and a half under his command. He was also an absolute supporter of the third prince. Now that the king of the Black Lava Nation was dead, he did not leave behind any posthumous edicts. Although the first prince had a strong backing, his enemy was Tion Duo. He did not dare to ascend the throne and could only manage the country's affairs in the name of the acting king. Now that the eldest prince was eyeing Marquis Chris covetously, the Marquis did not want to be the leader and provoke the eldest prince. After all, the threat of the Iron Nation had never subsided. In addition, William had allowed the Iron Nation to build a military fortress at the peak of the cliff. The Black Lava Nation was even more fearful of the City of Dawn. Even Marquis Chris started to think that the City of Dawn would ally with the Iron Nation, although he did not support the current first prince. However, the great aristocrats of the Black Lava Nation knew that the Iron Nation, which was constantly reforming, had always been known to abolish slavery and yearn for freedom. If they really attacked, they would definitely not leave the nobles alive. Therefore, the Black Lava Dukedom became unusually united despite the various internal and external troubles. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the key problem. As long as the threat at the border was no longer there, the battle for the throne of the Black Lava Dukedom would erupt again. However, the City of Dawn did not dare to act rashly because William did not have enough military strength. There was a military fortress next to him, and there were countless spies inside. The internal affairs of the Iron Nation were not peaceful. The king was controlled by Gertanases, but some nobles felt threatened. However, they were suppressed by the might of the king and did not dare to rebel. It was the same for the Black Lava Dukedom. The three parties were like running on a single log bridge. If they were not careful, they would fall off the cliff and lose everything. Under such circumstances, the three parties were anxiously preparing for war. At least they had to get rid of the internal dangers first. But under such circumstances, it is the most beneficial for my development. Because the power of the two dukedoms has been developed to the extreme, they are unable to expand their military strength. This is because the great aristocrats and the king do not have the financial and material resources to support the legions. Now, they can only build high walls, accumulate rations, and train more soldiers. Otherwise, they would not be selling slaves everywhere. This is an opportunity for me to take advantage of. I only need to convert those slaves into commoners and let them become laborers or a source of soldiers. Then, I can steadily increase the strength of the City of Dawn. William gazed at the north. Although the quality of the legions in the City of Dawn was high, their numbers were far from enough to withstand the future crisis. His ambition was not the territories of the human dukedoms, but the moment the war started, he would definitely encroach on the wealth, rations, and even the population of the two dukedoms. It was a pity that he did not have a source of slaves. The Iron Nation could send some slaves every month, but there were more and more spies. There were very few people who could be used, but I still have one last chance. William gradually turned his gaze to the snowy mountains of the East Sea. In his previous life, the Iron Nation's plan to slay the dragon had ended in failure. But this did not mean that William, who was hiding behind them, could not complete it. Slay the dragon? For what? Just for the treasure of the fire dragon? Not really. It was for every drop of blood, every piece of flesh, every bone, and every scale of the dragon. The value of the dragon was very high, whether it was the complete God's continent or the current legendary continent. The giant dragon was a legendary creature that humans had always yearned for. Whether it was conquering or slaying the dragon, it would bring great benefits to humans. Since the Iron Nation had the intention to slay the dragon, this naturally meant that they definitely had the ability to use the dragon's blood. They could use the blood of a dragon to create a legion of dragon followers. Even if there were only a few hundred dragon followers, it would be a surprise force. I have to take down this dragon. William clenched his fists. This was a rare opportunity. The southeastern corner was a remote area. They did not understand the rules of the legendary continent, and they did not understand the power of the great dragons. Many great dragons lived in the vast territory of the human empires. But why did they not use the great dragon's blood to create a large number of dragon followers? Otherwise, with the power of the human empires, wouldn't it be easy to create 10 legions of dragon followers? But they did not dare to. Humans had legendary warriors, legendary mages, and legendary warlocks. The great dragon race also had legendary great dragons. They were the ones who protected the great dragons that had yet to mature, regardless of their species. The great dragons were once the rulers of the First Era. Even after they were defeated, they still retained a large amount of power. In the truly prosperous areas, although the humans had dragon slayers, they could only kill the evil dragons that had committed many crimes. But every time the evil dragon was killed, there would always be a legendary great dragon expressionlessly appearing. There would always be a legendary tier dragon appearing expressionlessly, as if he had always been hiding somewhere, waiting for the dragon slayers to slay the evil dragon and obliterating most of the true value of the dragon blood, allowing the dragon slayers to take away the spoils of war. Because of this, there were very few dragon followers in the continent. For example, the fire dragon that lived in the snow mountain of the East Sea. It ate and slept all year round. Although it was also an evil elemental dragon, it did not commit any crimes. If they really wanted to pursue the matter, the fire dragon had a backer, and the most important thing was, those legendary great dragons could not be bothered with those wild great dragons in small places. The main responsibility of the legendary great dragons was to prevent the human empires from becoming stronger. Chapter 102. Time passed quickly. Another 5 months passed. Winter came, but the rain did not decrease. The city of Dawn, which was located in the subtropical region, welcomed its second harvest. The second batch of food had matured. The commoners had just brought the food back to the warehouse. William had also spent a lot of money to buy food. Now, 10 large granaries were completely filled, it had to be said. After the construction of public toilets and the use of feces as fertilizer, the yield per moo had increased by at least 2 times. In addition, the population had increased. The flat land on the east and west sides had been reclaimed. With so much food, as well as the fruits and wild beasts in the forest, it could feed at least 200,000 people for a year. Of course, in this magical world, the nutrients contained in the land far exceeded that in the real world. The new city was completely built. It was the same size as the old city. There were only 40,000 elves, but a lot of land was empty, leaving behind many uninhabited buildings. The city walls of the new city were also completed. Not only were they taller, but they were also more threatening. They were 5 meters taller than the old city walls, which meant that they were 15 meters tall and 6 meters wide. The surface of the city walls was poured with a lot of molten iron and copper, making the city walls even more indestructible. Besides the north gate, the passage between the new city and the old city had opened up another 3 small city gates to facilitate communication between the 2 cities. Ever since the slave trade in the Black Lava Nation disappeared, William could only rob some slaves from the Iron Nation every month. He had no other source of people. Seeing that the military fortress was about to be completed, he estimated that he would not even be able to get the last batch of slaves. But fortunately, a month ago, in the east of the city of Dawn, there was a half-elf gathering point that was more than 70 kilometers away. Due to the frequent attacks of the orcs, and seeing that the military fortress of the Iron Nation was about to be completed, the Lord made up his mind and brought all the half-elves to seek refuge with William. The key point was that they came because of William's identity as a half-elf. In particular, William's royal bloodline was no longer a secret. This was the main reason why they sought refuge with him. Or to put it bluntly, there were many half-elves on the legendary continent, and there were many legendary half-elves. But the history of the half-elves was not that great. No one had built a kingdom. Most of the half-elves had mixed bloodlines. It was almost impossible to find a half-elf with a noble bloodline like William. As a result, the city of Dawn welcomed another 23,000 half-elves. The city of Dawn had become twice as strong as it had been half a year ago. The population was close to 200,000. Their military strength was also growing rapidly, growing from 4,000 soldiers to 15,000 soldiers, which was the size of 5 legions. Now, there were 2 elf armies, 2 human armies, and 1 half-elf army. William finally had the chance to withdraw his personal guards and dwarf warriors from the legion, allowing them to maintain their independence. Then, he named the legions one by one. The first legion, which used to be a legion with many races mixed together, now only had human professionals left. He named it the Glory Army. William had high expectations for this legion. The old soldiers had died in battle, and the new soldiers had replaced them. Although there were many changes, this legion that he had personally led had brought glory to the city of Dawn. They were invincible. Every soldier was personally chosen by him, and their bloodline was at least at the middle level. If they could win a few more battles, this army would most likely obtain the army soul, which would give them an army buff. The second legion was made up entirely of humans and elves, and all of them were young, beautiful, tall, and valiant young women. He named it the Guardian Army. The purpose of this legion was obvious. It was definitely not to let them fight on the battlefield. If that was the case, the players would curse him to death. Their mission was to protect the city of Dawn. The soldiers of the Guardian Legion would act as patrol guards, city gate guards, and maintain the security of the City of Dawn. Needless to say, the moment the Guardian Legion was formed, all the long-legged female soldiers in chains stood in the central square. Half of the males in the city were pumped up, and they blocked the streets like a watertight waterfall. The 3rd and 4th Legions were the most powerful legions under William's command. Because they were made up of pure-blooded elves, the lifespan of elves was too long. They had not fought for many years. But this did not mean that they had no combat power. They could easily change occupations to professionals, and their levels were quite high. The elves who were chosen to join the army were all middle-level professionals above level 40. They were very powerful, but they lacked courage. But for the loyal elves, after a few battles, it was enough for them to form a complete army. William could not help but name them the Night Legion and the Moonlight Legion. This was because the elves in these 2 legions were mostly made up of these 2 elven races. As for the 5th Legion, which was the half-elven legion, it was named the Fearless Legion. After William ascertained the loyalty of the half-elf lord, he made him the legion commander of the Fearless Legion. After all, he was a level 61 warrior with an epic bloodline. Now that he had taken the initiative to suck up to William as the Lord of the City of Dawn, shouldn't he give him a chance? Of course, other than the regular army, there were also up to 2,800 mercenaries. These people were temporarily not very useful, but they were still under William's command. They could be considered a considerable combat power at critical times. 55. Can I even complete a mission these days? William looked worried. In almost a year, he had almost wiped out all the tribes near the City of Dawn. He had led his troops to settle the slightly threatening tribes. Why? Wasn't it just to get some experience points? The completion of the Lord's new city naturally gave him a lot of experience points as a reward. But he had just reached level 55, and he was still far from level 69. But he did not dare to go to the Iron Nation and the Black Lava Nation to find missions. He could wander around and find a way to hide his identity. The most important thing was that the atmosphere in these 2 duchies was too tense. He was afraid that if he made a ruckus, he would stir up some monstrous waves that would lead to a war between the 2 sides. That would disrupt his plans, and that would be troublesome. I have no choice. I can only wait for the game to open beta. I can use the Instance Dungeon Crystal to earn large amounts of experience points. If I only rely on missions, when can I reach the peak? William touched his handsome face. Many NPCs with higher bloodlines had leveled up faster than him. If he did not level up, his advantage in attributes would disappear. But just as he was feeling extremely depressed, Lautner pushed open the door and entered with a disregard for his own family. William saw him walk over with a serious expression. He said in a deep voice, "The military fortress of the Iron Nation has sent out 2 legions to the east. That was originally a diplomat of the Iron Nation. Augustine is personally leading the legion. Also, there are many experts following him. It seems that they are planning something big." What? William stood up in joy. Then he restrained his excited expression and took a deep breath. He slowly asked, "Who discovered the news?" "Alec." William narrowed his eyes. "Immediately inform the other legion commanders. Prepare all the best rangers and warriors of the legions. Ask all the assassins under Alec to come over. It's time to clean up the vermin in the city. The dragon-slaying battle, not far away." Chapter 103. At night. From afar, the city built on a cliff was like the light of dawn in the darkness. Tens of thousands of magic lamps were hung on the trees on both sides of the streets, on the city walls, and even on some unique buildings. Some rich commoners had even bought some magic lamps and hung them on their second-floor windows. It was obvious that they wanted to show off. The taverns were filled with drunkards, and the brothels were filled with men. When they met their acquaintances, they would reveal a proud and satisfied expression to show that they were awesome and persistent. As for the casinos, there was an endless stream of people who gambled with small amounts of money. Regardless of whether there were too few games in the casinos, their goal was to earn money. They did not care about the games. As the City of Dawn only closed the city gates at night, there was no curfew. Hence, many commoners came out at night. It was impossible for them not to return home at midnight, but in the middle of the night. No one knew that the 3 military camps at the edge of the city walls in the old district had already prepared for battle. The 2 military camps in the new district were also preparing for battle. However, they could not wear armor for this operation. Otherwise, it would cause too much commotion. Furthermore, there were not many soldiers on duty. Almost all the soldiers wore casual clothes. But the commander of the Glory Legion was ghastly pale. He looked at the 500 spies who had been tied up in their sleep. At this moment, in the training ground of the military camp, 500 naked spies were tied up. Their mouths were covered as they knelt on the ground. The soldiers who saw this scene were all shocked and unable to calm down. Although this was an order from the Lord, this large-scale operation to find the spies still puzzled many soldiers. They could not believe that their former comrades were spies, and there were so many of them, especially when this was the Glory Legion, the first legion of the City of Dawn, Legion Commander. How is this possible? Someone looked in disbelief at the comrades who were kneeling on the ground. He vaguely remembered that they had fought and trained together. Some of them had even been his blades. How could he believe this? And Lori, Jack, Cligia, a small team leader, called out their names. He looked at the Deputy Legion Commander with an ugly expression. He gulped and said, "Could it be that the Lord made a mistake?" Legion Commander Glory was a human with a Grandmaster bloodline, level 58. Julio also clenched his fists. He looked at the soldiers who were discussing among themselves and suddenly shouted, "All of you, shut up. I know you are all confused, but the Lord will personally give you an explanation. Do you still want to be punished by military law? Lewis, take those brothers to where they should go. The rest of you, stay here and don't move." As soon as Julio finished speaking, the other soldiers also knew that the Vice Legion Commander was angry. They instantly got into formation and stood neatly. However, there were some empty seats that were not filled because they did not believe that those brothers were spies. When the 500 or so spies who were kneeling on the ground saw this scene, many of their eyes were already filled with tears. But they hated it. They were really spies. They came with a mission, but they never thought that they would slowly become one with it. Many people even thought that they were part of the City of Dawn, a member of the Honor Army. Only now did they realize that traitors were not fit to become soldiers of the Honor Legion. The execution of 3,500 spies would cause a bloodbath in the City of Dawn. Or, rather, they would all be beheaded at the same time. There was no chance for them to send a message. And at that moment, it was officially 12 o'clock at night. In a few seconds that the clock tower's bell rang throughout the entire City of Dawn. William did not personally preside over this execution. Lautner, Alec, Eric, and Odom were all sent out by him. If they could not complete this simple task, they would not be able to live in the future. He was more concerned about the spies in the army that he had chosen. The main gate of the military camp opened. Countless gazes looked over. They wanted the tall and handsome man to give a good explanation. Julio silently stood beside him, not saying a word. William surveyed the soldiers of the Honor Legion and said in a deep voice, "Untie the ropes on their mouths." The ropes were untied very quickly, but no one dared to shout. They lowered their heads and looked at the ground. They did not dare to look at William's eyes. "Raise your heads." An angry roar reverberated throughout the training ground. Swish! Whether they were kneeling or standing, as if they had received a military order, they quickly raised their heads and looked at the Lord who had led them to glory. "Tell me, did I wrongly accuse you, or are you spies from the Iron Nation?" The entire training ground was silent. Many naked men kneeling on the ground had tears streaming down their faces, but they did not dare to say a word. They only sobbed. "How many times have you cried? Tell me why." William suddenly roared ferociously, but everyone could see that he raised his head forcefully, as if he was trying to hold back his tears. All sorts of actions. The 500 elite soldiers could only lower their heads even more. When they saw this scene, the other soldiers were not fools. They started to understand that they were not wrongly accused. Many of them even scolded themselves for daring to doubt the Lord's orders, but they could not imagine how heartless a person had to be to become a spy for the Iron Nation. It had to be known, whether it was the Iron Nation or the Black Lava Nation. Whether it was the commoners, soldiers, or other personnel who worked for the nation, their treatment was very ordinary. Even if the elite soldiers were treated better compared to the City of Dawn, it was like comparing a stinky stone in a toilet pit to a pearl. The blissful life in the City of Dawn could be seen just by looking at the people who had become commoners from the City of Dawn. William scanned the faces of each of them. He used his insight one by one. Gradually, the orange name was no longer orange. Instead, it was a deeper shade of green. He took another deep breath and said sorrowfully, "You can leave. I'll pretend that I don't have brothers like you. This strand of hair that has never been cut since birth. I'll kill you." William picked up a long and narrow sword and grabbed the long hair draped over his back. He was about to cut it. "My lord, don't. You can't do this." A young soldier knelt and moved forward. His face was full of tears as he shouted, because they all knew that the elves would not cut their hair, because they all knew that the elves' hair was like their own limbs. Had anyone seen an elf with short hair? What was this? What kind of friendship was this? The Lord had treated them like his own limbs. But they were going to betray their Lord because of the Iron Nation? Betray their elder brother? "My lord, kill us." The soldiers lowered their heads in pain. "Legion Commander, we deserve to die. Please kill us." Some of the warriors closed their eyes, waiting for glory to descend upon them. "My lord, we deserve to die. Please don't do this." 500 people knelt on the ground and cried out in pain. But William's sword slashed down. Her long, flowing hair instantly became short. The soldiers of the Legion clenched their fists in pain. As for the 500 people, they were already sobbing and lying paralyzed on the ground. William's hair was blown away by the wind. It slowly fell from William's hand to the ground. He looked at his hand in a daze. No one knew how much pain he was feeling, but their Lord closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he shouted, "Don't you want to leave? Quickly crawl back to where you should be standing. Why are you still kneeling?" "Yes, my lord." A group of tightly bound fellows jumped, crawled, and wiggled like earthworms. It was unknown where they got their strength from, but they jumped, crawled, and twisted like earthworms. Meanwhile, the bell rang. The greatest hidden danger in the City of Dawn had been solved in the most perfect way. Chapter 104. After a night of bloodshed, the City of Dawn did not descend into chaos. Because this mission to eliminate spies did not implicate any innocent people. William's eyes of fire and gold were not a joke. Whoever he stared at was a spy. Actually, many spies had gradually developed a good impression of him. It was just that he was too lazy to slowly subdue them. Otherwise, wouldn't his endowments have been for nothing? Actually, spies would not have red names. Before the war started, they were yellow names like the winged people of the Alliance. But other than a small number of winged people in the City of Dawn, there were no neutral merchants in the City of Dawn. Hence, all those with yellow names had to die. As for why the spies of the Honor Legion were so easily subdued, it was because when he chose them, they had already lived in the City of Dawn for a period of time. Because of various policies and the arrogant way of glory and eternity, it was really a flashy operation. After such a long period of nurturing, he had gained even more good impression points. These people seemed to be yellow names, but that was only before the last veil was lifted. They were nominally part of the Iron Nation. Most importantly, without 1,000 good impression points, it was never considered absolute loyalty. Absolute loyalty did not mean that one could not be betrayed. Mistreating a pet with 1,000 loyalty points would cause the pet's loyalty to drop, and it might even run away. This was the same logic. Even with William's endowments, he did not manage to gain all of his subordinates, let alone the others. A person's heart was not something that could be determined by numbers. There were too many factors involved. There were more than 3,000 spies. Who could guarantee that their loyalty points were above 700? Even if their loyalty points were above 700, as time passed and William's endowments slowly decreased. Among them, in this invisible war, William's endowments were very important. After many people in the city woke up, they saw that the eastern city wall was covered with bloody heads. There were more than 2,000 heads. The feeling of yawning in the morning was as terrifying as seeing the end of the world. Many people were so scared that they almost peed their pants. At this time, some people saw the notice and understood what had happened last night. At this time, Out of the 5 legions in the City of Dawn, 3 legions were not in the city. Only the Honor Legion and the Guardian Legion remained in the city. Initially, the barracks were built on the edge of the city wall for 2 reasons. One was to not disturb the lives of the civilians in the city, and the other was to quickly assemble and dispatch troops. They could even climb up the city wall to guard it. As a result, almost no one noticed the departure of the 3 legions at 3 in the morning. The key reason why the Glory Army did not send out their troops was to hide the fact that they had sent 500 spies. They had been sent to guard the mine and let the Iron Nation think that they were all dead. They might even be able to bring their families back in the future. The 3 legions, together with William's personal guards, had a total of more than 9,500 warriors. They formed a black line that was 10,000 meters long and advanced rapidly along the cliff to the east. They were heading to the military fortress 15 miles away. They could not hide their operation to eliminate spies for too long, as the Iron Nation would definitely notice that something was wrong if the spies did not send out magic scrolls for a long time. Time was of the essence, and they had to act in time. Although the Iron Nation's military fortress has yet to be completed, the city wall is 20 meters tall and 7 meters thick. At least 2 rows of soldiers can stand on it. Furthermore, the city wall is very short. Even if the military fortress is only guarded by a legion, they can still set up defensive lines on the city wall. Even if it's not 2 rows, at least 1 row is enough. If we want to take down this military fortress, we will definitely suffer many casualties. Alec, the intelligence chief of the City of Dawn, immediately explained the details to William. William raised his hand and narrowed his eyes. How thick is their city gate? I remember that it's only 7 inches thick, and there's a layer of 3-centimeter thick steel. Furthermore, it hasn't been enchanted. City gate? Alec was taken aback. He quickly nodded. My lord, you are right. They haven't had time to enchant it. But you only asked us to bring the siege ladders. You didn't ask us to bring the siege hammers. Siege hammers? William suddenly ordered. We're the 2D asterisk and men fools. Come over here. Subsequently, the ground trembled. 2 tall figures walked out from the crowd. It was the level 65 Bloody Crusher and another strong, equally fierce and cruel troll. However, on the troll's head was a huge A-shaped epic helmet. Lautner and the rest were dumbfounded. What were they going to do? William snapped his fingers, pointed at the level 55 troll, and said, Siege Irondall, do you believe that after the mages bless him and give him a chance to run 100 meters, he'll be able to break through that seemingly indestructible door? The group of people gulped as they looked at the big guy. He was almost 4 meters tall. The troll weighed more than 3,000 kilograms. He wore a set of super high-quality armor and a specially made helmet of extremely high quality. Don't say. It was really possible. However, after crashing into the gate, even if the troll didn't die, he would be retarded. But William didn't care. He had used soul magic to enslave the troll. It was a disposable item. Although the troll also had Grandmaster bloodline, his other abilities were far inferior. He had fewer tricks than Bloody Crusher. It could be said that in order to quickly take down this military fortress, William had used his trump card. He had used up an epic helmet and a troll with Grandmaster bloodline. Was the price not high? As for William's declaration of war, it would definitely reach the ears of Augustine and Gerda. But he didn't care. The Iron Nation had prepared for the dragon-slaying battle for a long time. Augustine was also a legendary figure who would not retreat until he achieved his goal. He would not give up the dragon-slaying mission just because the military fortress was being attacked. He would not return in a panic. Since he had prepared a lot, he would definitely slay the dragon and return victorious with the corpse of the dragon. Finally, he would arrogantly attack the City of Dawn together with a new legion sent by the Iron Nation. So William had to act quickly. He had already let Augustine leave one night earlier. If he delayed, whether it was because of the butterfly effect, Augustine would succeed in slaying the dragon or fail. Then William would lose too many benefits and opportunities. When the Dawn Army was less than 5 kilometers away from the military fortress, the scouts of the Iron Nation had already discovered them. This was not something that the Elfin Rangers could stop. The main thing was that this group of people did not travel through the forest. Instead, they walked on the flat grassland at the edge of the cliff. This kind of blatant march was simply too arrogant. At that moment, the walls of the military fortress were filled with soldiers. The front line was filled with shield bearers, while the back was filled with archers. The catapults were ready, and some heavy-duty crossbows were also moved to the walls. They had no choice. They had not built arrow towers yet. The heavy-duty crossbows could only be placed on the walls. As the Legion commander of the 13th Legion, Brant frowned. He silently cursed the intelligence department of the Iron Nation for being idiots and retarded. He had heard that the higher-ups of the Iron Nation had planted no less than thousands of spies in the City of Dawn. There were at least 20 spies who had transmission scrolls. If the City of Dawn attacked the military fortress, the spies in the city would definitely be alerted. They would not be able to hide from the spies in the Glory Legion. But they are already at our doorstep, and I have not received any news. Are you telling me that the Dawn Army is going to send troops to help slay the dragon? Brant clenched his fists. He had just sent back information. Augustine would definitely not return to provide reinforcements. But the reinforcements from the Iron Nation would need at least 8 hours to arrive. This meant that he had to lead 3,000 soldiers and defend until that moment. He glanced at the tens of thousands of trembling slaves in the city. Naturally, he did not think much of them. Perhaps there were many professionals among them, but they had not gone through training and had no equipment. Their combat power was extremely low, and they could not climb up the walls. Even if they did, they would only cause trouble. They could only carry the arrows and do manual labor. Hence, he shouted with a sinister gaze, "The Legion of the City of Dawn dares to invade. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Kill." 3,000 people shouted in unison. Their voices were deafening. The Dawn Army, which was tens of thousands of meters away, could hear them clearly. William looked at the military fortress, which was almost entirely made of stone and steel. It gave off a strong sense of oppression. It was like a huge magical beast hovering above the cliff. He gently waved his hand, and the flag was immediately raised. The 3 legions quickly got into formation. Among them, 3,000 shield-bearers stepped forward in unison. They followed the command of the flag and advanced neatly, and the short-haired William was in the lead. He was like a charging rhinoceros. His running speed gradually increased. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and the air around him whistled. His speed became faster and faster. He seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning, and he smashed into the city gate with billowing smoke and dust. Bang! A sword that shone with thunder battle energy slashed angrily at the city gate, which was made of steel. The 5-meter-tall city gate trembled. A clear crack appeared on the city gate. When Brent saw this scene, his heart that had risen to his throat swallowed back into his stomach. He laughed in disdain. "How much battle energy do you have? How can you slash with your sword?" William shrugged his shoulders and shook his numb hand. He silently leaned against the city gate. Then, a huge figure wearing steel armor walked out from the formation. He also ran wildly towards the city gate like William. Brent was in a daze as he rubbed his eyes. Gosh. Chapter 105. Shoot the arrows. Where are the arrows? Shoot at him. Don't let the troll get close to the city gate, Brent shouted. The archers drew their bows and released their arrows, but when the arrows hit the troll, they only grazed the armor weakly. They did not even leave a scratch on the armor. But the power of some heavy crossbow arrows was not small. A pure steel arrow that was 1 meter long and weighed 3 kilograms needed 3 people to pull the bow together to shoot the arrow accurately. There was no doubt. This was the most powerful defense weapon in version 1.0. This kind of heavy crossbow could completely torture the enemy like a candied fruit. If this thing had magic attached to it, it would be a divine weapon. 10 giant crossbow arrows were aimed at the troll, who was speeding up and going berserk. Bang, buzz, buzz, buzz. The bowstrings made of magical beasts vibrated violently. 10 powerful steel arrows, with visible rotating air currents, reached the troll in the blink of an eye. But at the same time, Lautner, Alec, Eric, and a newly joined half-elf lord, fearless Legion leader Christian, appear behind the troll at the same time. They each held a super heavy shield and blocked the troll with their bodies. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 steel arrows that could have hit the troll sent the 3 figures flying more than 10 meters away. They even crashed into the troll, causing them to bleed. But in the end, none of the arrows hit the troll, and his charge was unstoppable. Seeing that the heavy crossbow arrows were too late, Brent could only clench his fists and stare at the bottom of the city gate. He only listened. Bang! The city gate, which had been reinforced with steel, had a huge crack that allowed a person to walk through. Then, the iron-headed baby, who was wearing a deformed epic-level helmet, fell heavily to the ground, foaming at the mouth. Everyone attack. Take down the city wall. Lautner slowly stood up from the ground, coughing blood as he shouted. Although the specially made heavy shield was not pierced by the heavy arrows, the force was too great, causing him to suffer serious internal injuries. But now everything was worth it. The fact that such an incomparably sturdy city gate had a hole in it meant that the military fortress had been taken down. Throwing stones and heavy arrows was no longer a problem. William, who was originally below the city gate, jumped over the gate and saw a few unlucky fellows who had been seriously injured by the shattered city gate. The other dozen soldiers were still in a daze. They were also puzzled. The battle hadn't started yet, right? There were no shouts from the city walls yet. Why was the city gate broken first? Were the guys on top of the city walls eating shit? Are you kidding us? However, when they saw that William, who was alone, had already broken into the city, they immediately drew their swords and surrounded him. Trash! William clenched his fist and smashed it at the soldier who was charging at the fiercest. Before the blade landed, the soldier's head was deformed by William's punch. His feet suddenly flew forward, and then he fell heavily to the ground. Kill! Reinforcements came one after another from the city walls. William wielded the epic level thunder longsword that he had reforged and charged forward without hesitation. He lifted his hand and slashed at the weapon of the soldier in front of him. The soldier's body and armor were also split into 2. Fresh blood spurted into the air. It was a terrifying scene. When someone attacked from the left, William turned and kicked fiercely. The enemy's battle energy shield instantly shattered, and he flew backward and crashed into the city wall. The back of his head hit the wall, and he died. Dozens of warriors surrounded William. Then a soul shock wave suddenly exploded. Dozens of figures flew backward. It was like a goddess scattering flowers. The reinforcements behind them were knocked off their feet. Even though this attack was not fatal, many people felt dizzy. It was as if their souls had left their bodies. Seeing this scene, the other warriors from the Iron Nation all felt a sense of panic. The Lord of the City of Dawn was like a violent Tyrannosaurus. He dashed around without firing a single arrow. The Lord of the City of Dawn was like a Tyrannosaurus. He was not a proper ranger. He did not play by the rules. Brant could only watch as William slaughtered his way through the city gate. But he could not stop him. 3,000 shield bearers had already carried the siege ladders to the city gate. What was even more shocking was that these well-armored fellows were all elves and half-elves. They could easily dodge the stones. Even if they could not dodge the heavy arrows, there would not be too many casualties. As their equipment was shining with silver light, it was as if they had been infused with mithril. As a result, even if Brant's archers used their battle energy arrows, they would not be able to severely injure their enemies. Furthermore, these fellows had shields. The heavy crossbows were not very effective. They could not even skewer a Tongalu, elves and half-elves. How can I fight against 3 legions? Brant cursed in his heart. Boom, boom, boom. Heavy footsteps could be heard again. A troll with even more exaggerated equipment came to the city gate under the protection of the shield bearers. He held a glowing green mace and smashed it at the city gate. In just a short while, the gap in the city gate continued to widen. Some shield bearers frantically rushed into the city gate and fought alongside their lord. At the same time, there were also some powerful soldiers. That's right, they were soldiers. They stepped on the siege ladders and easily jumped to the top of the city wall. They started to massacre the enemies. Oh, these ferocious elves were senior captains. Their levels were not high. They were only level 40 or 50, but their bloodlines were high. They were advanced and grandmaster at that moment. Brant's heart turned cold. He did not even have the desire to attack, but the soldier beside him swallowed his saliva and pointed to the warehouse behind. "My lord, burn the warehouse and retreat from the secret tunnel behind." Brant turned to look at his personal guard. He narrowed his eyes and resolutely pierced through the personal guard who had followed him for many years. He ignored the shocked and frightened gazes of the soldiers beside him. Suddenly, he roared, "The Iron Nation is unjust. They mistreat the civilians and slaves. They wantonly killed the nobles. I, Brant, will leave my subordinates and join the Lord of Dawn." At that moment, Brant jumped to the bottom of the city wall. He stretched out his hand and swept away a few soldiers who were obstructing him. He knelt on one knee in front of William. "I, Brant, the 13th Legion commander of the Iron Nation, welcome Lord William into the city." His voice was very loud. He used his battle energy to cover half of the battlefield. For a moment, many soldiers were dumbfounded and stopped fighting. William held his blood-stained long sword and slowly walked in front of Brant. He tilted his head and said, "Very good, but I don't like traitors." Swish! A blue sword light slashed diagonally. The sudden appearance of the battle energy shield was instantly destroyed. Brant's eyes were filled with fear. He had a ferocious expression and wanted to retreat. But William grabbed his arm and slammed his head into it. Brant's nose was bleeding profusely. His dizzy head was thrown backward. Slash! Another ray of green light streaked past. The poisonous short sword that was enhanced with the light of dawn slashed his neck in an instant. Brant's head, along with his flesh, slowly fell to the ground. The headless corpse continuously spewed out fresh blood. Brant, who had over 10,000 HP, died in just a few short seconds after receiving this fatal throat slash attack. That's why I said that those who don't wear helmets and neck protectors are idiots. William raised his eyebrows. Then he looked at the dumbfounded soldiers. He pointed his sword at them and said, "Point out the fellows who used the heavy-duty crossbow, and I'll spare your lives." As a soldier threw down his weapon in shock, the others also threw down their weapons. They even pointed out the tens of unlucky fellows. William waved his longsword. Swish, swish, swish. His sword energy flashed, and tens of heads fell to the ground. "I can spare your lives, but all of you have to go in mine." William shouted angrily. He officially announced that the flag of the Iron Nation's military fortress would be completely changed. D*MN. The elves have always been outnumbered. Your Iron Nation really looks down on elves. William twitched his lips. This military fortress was just as he had imagined. It was extremely easy to take it down. In particular, he did not expect that there would be a Legion commander who surrendered. The reason why they lost so quickly was that the humans had not fought with the elves for a long time. They had long forgotten how powerful the former rulers of the continent were. Chapter 106. Active Attack. Iron Nation's Military Fortress Battle. Difficulty, a dash. Mission completion, 95%. Remarks. You have won the battle with minimal effort. Congratulations. You have successfully angered a nation. Prepare to be judged. Reward. 95,000 experience. Reward. Military Fortress Battle Instance Dungeon Crystal. William held the instance Dungeon Crystal in his hands. He did not expect that this kind of mission would have a crystal. But then again, although the mission difficulty is a dash, this kind of mission difficulty should be given to the players. To the players, and a mission is no less difficult than a small main storyline mission. The Iron Nation used a legion to guard the military fortress. If the players were of the same level, they would need at least 3 times, or even 4 or 5 times the number of players to conquer the fortress. I was able to win so easily because the mainframe has never treated me as an NPC. William smiled and heaved a sigh of relief. He kept the crystal in his space ring. With this instance dungeon crystal, the players could also drop equipment. If there were no accidents, this instance dungeon would be more popular than the Misty Valley instance dungeon. Because this kind of war instance dungeon had a high drop rate of equipment, it was the instance dungeon that the players liked the most. After the players entered the instance dungeon, they would fight together with the NPCs. No matter what the difficulty of the instance dungeon was, the players would replace a portion of the NPCs and carry out some attack missions. But the players would not be able to see William killing. Perhaps after William entered the city gate, he would stand at the side and act as an NPC guiding the way. He would watch a large group of players enter the city gate and die, until the players killed Brant and the group of small monsters around him. That was the key to winning this instance dungeon. William patted his head. It was not the time to be dreaming. He invested all his experience into his character level. Swoosh! A white light flashed. William was already at level 56. He was one step closer to the upper limit of the version. At the same time, Nox suddenly ran over and said in surprise, "Lord, the troll is still alive. Iron Doll is not dead?" William was pleasantly surprised. He quickly walked to the city gate. The troll had already stood up, but his body was swaying. It was as if the whole world had been turned upside down. He could not tell the directions. After all, even his epic helmet had been deformed. William did not expect this guy's head to be so hard. He walked around him a few times and nodded. "Not bad. I didn't pay attention just now and thought that you were dead. I didn't expect you to only have a few negative buffs, but they are quite serious." Of course, Shurfeng had never intended to kill Iron Doll in one go. It would be best if he could use this fellow again. Even if he had to waste an epic helmet, it would not matter. After all, in a battle like this, high-level equipment was a secondary consumable. William ordered, "Nox, get someone to bring him back. Get a priest. Oh, get a mage to make some medicine for him to treat his injuries." The muscular clerics would not be able to heal the trolls. Their holy light only worsened the trolls' injuries. "We're rich. We're rich." Lautner ran back and hurriedly said, "Let's not talk about the 60,000 slaves. The warehouse still has 600,000 kilograms of rations, 3,000 sets of excellent blue armor, 100,000 arrows, at least 200,000 kilograms of refined copper and iron, and 800,000 kilograms of various stone materials. Oh, right, including the 10 heavy-duty crossbows on the city wall. We found another 10 at the warehouse entrance. I reckon that they did not have time to move them up the city wall before we rushed up." Lautner paused with lingering fear. "You definitely won't expect that there are 30 catapults in the warehouse that have not been assembled. If the enemy knew that we were going to attack, they would have formed a formation of nearly 100 catapults. We would definitely have suffered a lot of casualties." William happily waved his fist. More money could really make him rich. But he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If he did not have the player's innate skill, insight, which allowed him to identify the spies and capture them all at once, the consequences would have been unimaginable. He did not even need to think to know that the catapults in this military fortress could not only be used for defense, but also to attack the City of Dawn. The Iron Nation's ambition was not small, but the most important thing was, William liked to fight this kind of war that did not cost him anything. He could not afford to suffer heavy losses. Even if he lost a legion, his losses would be far greater than the Iron Nation's losses of 3 legions. His soldiers were too precious. Oh, right. How many casualties did we suffer? William personally saw many soldiers being pierced by the heavy-duty crossbows. The explosive power of the arrows was not something that could be blocked by battle energy shields. Even though the elfin warriors under his command were wearing silver armor and holding shields, they were still easily pierced by the steel arrows like candied fruits. 117 people died in battle. All of them died from the heavy-duty crossbows. 389 people suffered light injuries. No serious injuries. Lautner sighed. As long as it was a war, there would always be casualties. It was already very rare to have so few casualties. If it was not for the Iron Child, if it was not for the fact that these high-level combatants were frantically protecting the Iron Child, if it was not for William taking the lead and slashing a crack in the city gate. Anyway, if they did not have so many advantages, the casualties would have been 7 or 8 times higher. William nodded with a heavy expression. "Tell the other Legion commanders to bring all the officers above the rank of team leader." "Yes." Lautner nodded and immediately went to inform the others. Not long after, 3 deputy legion commanders brought 1,500 people to William. Needless to say, these 1,500 people were the backbone of the 3 legions. Most of them had advanced bloodlines, and there were dozens of Grandmaster bloodlines. In the eyes of the players, they were all boss-level NPCs. After all, the elfin population was too small. In a situation where they did not have an advantage in terms of population, their bloodline potential was naturally very high. If not, they would not be able to destroy the human legions so easily. Moreover, there would be too many such boss-level teams in the future, regardless of whether it was a duchy, grand duchy, kingdom, or empire. They all had various types of boss-level teams. They were also known as execution teams. William's next goal was to go deep into the snowy mountains of the East Sea. He might directly face the elite legions of the Iron Nation and even the Great Dragon clans. Therefore, he decided to mobilize the high-level combatants for an execution mission. Of course, the rest of the troops would be used for other purposes. He looked at the legion commanders of the Dark Knight Legion and the Moonlight Legion. Legolas and Albert, the 2 of you will lead these 1,500 people and my personal guards to the snowy mountains of the East Sea along their route. The rest of the troops will be handed over to Lautner. He will immediately lead the other 4,000 people to the South Sea port. As for Christian, you will lead the Fearless Legion to guard this military fortress and prevent the Iron Nation from taking it back. Before William finished his sentence, he called out, "Eric, Alec, the 2 of you will also follow me to the snowy mountains of the East Sea." "Yes, Lord." Everyone stood up in unison and patted their chests with their right hands. They lowered their heads and shouted, "In that case, check your rations and water. We will set off immediately." Once William's voice fell, everyone immediately moved. Lautner led the remaining troops of the 2 legions and ran at full speed towards the South Seaport. They would board a large ship and attack along the coastline. This would be a surprise attack. If William's execution team really met with misfortune, Lautner's mission would be extremely important. Would it be too tiring to fight such continuous battles? You must be joking. Everyone had battle energy. Their physical fitness was excellent and top-notch. Legolas and Albert were Blackleaf elves and Moonlight elves respectively. Both of them had epic bloodlines, but he did not know why he felt that the name Legolas was very familiar. Could it be? Whose copyright had the production company of the gods violated this time? Chapter 107. Albert was the deputy commander of the Moonlight Legion. He was a level 53 fire element warrior, and his sub-occupation was a blacksmith. He had an epic hidden occupation, a flame warrior, and an epic bloodline. In addition, he had inherited equipment from his family. He also knew how to make equipment. His dazzling equipment was even more impressive than William's. Not only was he strong in close combat, but he was also very tanky. The deputy commander of the Night Legion, Legolas, had a hidden occupation, a Gloom Ranger. He was level 55 and had awakened a wind element attribute. His sub-occupation was a wind element mage. However, he did not like to use magic skills because he was a pure ranger. Mages were just for fun. In particular, his close combat ability was outstanding. Besides occasionally using the short sword that he carried with him to deal a fatal blow to his enemies, he preferred to use his bow and arrows to kill his enemies. Even if his enemies were very close to him, he would use his bow and arrows to destroy their heads. In short, Legolas did not use his magic and close combat skills often. The Gloom Ranger was a very powerful hidden occupation. He had many tricks, such as concentrated shooting, flying arrows, storm of arrows, and so on. He could use his bow and arrows to easily face many strong close combat enemies. William's expression suddenly tightened. He seemed to remember who Legolas was. He was clearly the elfin prince from the Lord of the Rings. The production company of gods was too shameless. Now that he had an elfin prince, a dwarf prince, and an excellent lord like William, could he form a team to protect the ring? William, who was marching, suddenly raised his head and looked at the snowy mountain of the East Sea, which was 13,000 meters tall. He could not help but mutter, "It's quite interesting. But Odom is in the City of Dawn. This trip is not to destroy the ring, but to slay the dragon." Furthermore, This mountain is a dormant volcano. Legolas, who was beside him, faintly heard something. He suddenly said, Lord, do you think that the Iron Nation is planning to slay the dragon? William nodded solemnly. That's right. Augustine has brought 2 elite legions from the Iron Nation and so many experts. Their target is most likely the fire dragon. Our mission this time is to disrupt their plans. Albert had a look of sudden realization. Then he chuckled and said, My lord, you were able to guess the enemy's target with just this little bit of information. Your foresight is far beyond what I can compare with. You can also guess, as long as you train less muscles and use your brain more. William glanced at the 2-meter-tall Albert. Even though he was an elf, he was tall and sturdy. His arms and fists were strong, and he could stand on them. In short, this guy was definitely not a normal moonlight elf, because it was difficult for him to climb a tree. Albert did not comment on William's words. He thought that the Lord wanted him to give up his profession as a blacksmith. So he pursed his lips and said, If I can't forge iron in my life, it would be meaningless. As he spoke, Albert reached out and snatched Bloody Crusher's spiked mace. He swung it horizontally and trained his biceps. The 4-meter-tall troll's eyelids twitched when he saw the mace being flung away. He decided not to ask for his weapon back for the time being. After all, he was his master's slave, and Albert would return his weapon to him sooner or later. Eric was silent throughout the journey, as was his habit. Alec had already led his scouts to scout ahead and check for any possible ambushes. William was a legendary boss, and he was leading 4 epic bosses, a level 66 Grandmaster Troll, and 2,000 super elites. He was very confident that he would be able to gain enough benefits from this battle. It had been 3 days since Augustine had led the 2 legions to the snowy mountains of the East Sea. Other than a short break, they had been on the road the entire time. He had received news from the moment the military fortress discovered the enemy to the moment the military fortress was destroyed. But it was precisely because of this that he would not lead his troops back. Otherwise, he would directly face the Dawn Army, which was in high spirits. By then, regardless of the outcome, the Iron Nation Legion would suffer heavy losses. Augustine did not know if the Dawn Army would continue to chase after them, nor did he know how many people would chase after them. He also did not know if William knew that he had the intention to slay the dragon. But the key point was that if the Dawn Army continued to travel for a few days, it would be enough to suppress their morale. When the war really started, it was uncertain who would win and who would lose. If the Dawn Army did not chase after them, then he would return victorious with the corpse of the great dragon. Then, with the army of the Iron Nation, he did not believe that they would not be able to recapture the military fortress under a pincer attack. If they recaptured the military fortress, the City of Dawn, which did not dare to split its troops, would be completely destroyed. It was not an exaggeration to say that a horse would run to death from a mountain that was in sight. Augustine chose a small path that was difficult to walk on. He completely avoided the path that was easier to walk on because there were many great dragon clans living there. He tried his best to avoid those enemies. Although the great dragon clans were not necessarily loyal, and it was very likely that they would run away after a fight, he did not want to waste his troops to kill them. Slaying the dragon was the key. He would avoid the great dragon clans if he could, especially since he had a spy. The sky gradually turned dark. Augustine continued to lead the army on their way until the second moon appeared in the night sky. Only then did he give the order for the soldiers under his command to rest on the spot. They were to eat and drink as long as they did not make any noise. At the same time, suddenly, he heard a strange voice. Augustine squinted his eyes. He abandoned his soldiers and walked into the dense forest alone. As he stretched out his hand to pluck the leaves in front of him, a figure in a black robe suddenly appeared in front of him like a ghost. Augustine was not frightened. Instead, he smiled and said, "Muckared, long time no see." The person in the black robe was the culprit of the devil's den, Muckared. He lifted his head, and his green eyes flickered. "Yes, it has been 5 years. Now that you are finally here, I thought that you had given up on slaying the dragon. Speaking of which, how many years have you been relying on that fire dragon? Even with your abilities, you have no chance of sacrificing it?" Augustine knew that Mucka Red was definitely greedier than ordinary people thought. If he had the ability to sacrifice the dragon, why would he want to ally with them? Both parties had already decided. As long as they succeeded in slaying the dragon, Mucka Red would obtain the soul of the great dragon. Augustine and the rest would obtain the corpse of the great dragon. All in all, it seemed like Augustine would gain more benefits. However, the soul of the great dragon might be even more valuable to a dark warlock. The two of them got closer to each other in the dark forest. Then, they turned and walked into an even denser forest. Other than the sound of their conversation, there was only the sound of laughter. No one knew what they were talking about. Chapter 108. Augustine walked out of the dense forest and took a few deep breaths. The conversation just now had made him very uncomfortable. It was not that he liked to face a dark warlock like Mucka Red. It gave him an oppressive feeling. Augustine squinted his eyes and pondered. This old fellow did not mention that we need to sacrifice lives to activate the magic formation that is a fatal threat to the giant dragon. Damn Mucka Red. Does he want to send my soldiers to their deaths? Augustine shook his head gloomily. Although he was not a citizen of the Iron Nation, these people were his soldiers. Now that they were following him, he would not let them die for nothing. Even if it was to slay the dragon, he could not kill the goose that laid the golden eggs. It was more important to occupy the city of Dawn and the Black Lava Nation. It was more important to preserve his soldiers. He had to prioritize his priorities. Slaying the dragon could be delayed, but attacking the chaotic Black Lava Nation was an opportunity that would not come again. Then I can only lure out some giant dragon clansmen and use them as sacrifices. Augustine raised his eyebrows. He could only do this for now. He could not think of any other solutions. After all, Mucka Red had said that he had placed a soundproof magic formation at the entrance of the dragon cave. As long as the mountain didn't start shaking, even if they killed all the Fire Dragon tribe members, the pig wouldn't wake up. This also meant that Mucka Red had the same intention. However, they would definitely lose some soldiers. Augustine climbed up a tree and looked at the snowy mountains of the East Sea not far away. He smiled. There's still one more day. William led the elite 2,000 soldiers and finally caught up with the Iron Nation. They stopped at the place where Augustine had temporarily rested the previous night. Some of the flowers and grasses on the ground were bent, and some were even uprooted. There were many scratches on the surrounding trees. Some soldiers were probably bored and had even carved some unsightly portraits on the tree branches, of course. This was a very common situation. No one had deliberately left these marks. William followed along the way. Almost every place where they stopped to rest had many marks left behind. Augustine led 2 legions. It was impossible for every soldier to be highly trained. Furthermore, there were so many of them, so it was difficult not to leave any marks in the forest. Even Albert, who was a muscular man, would throw out a battle energy slash when he had nothing to do. The trees that were cut down were even more obvious. Of course, the key was that there were no pursuers behind William. He did not have to be so strict. Everyone knew this. Augustine doesn't seem to be guarded against me. Is he that confident? William scratched his head. He did not understand. Why didn't Augustine leave a single scout behind? Or did he leave something behind that I didn't notice? According to his memories from his previous life, not only was Augustine's combat power extraordinary, but he had also developed the Freedom Alliance after the Iron Nation had been destroyed by the Darkness Invasion. But William forgot. Be it humans or NPCs, they all needed to grow. Augustine was now just a proud young man. He and Gerdanaces had known each other since they were young, and they had founded the Freedom Alliance together. It could not be said that everything had been smooth sailing, but with their combined efforts, they had taken control of the Iron Nation in just a few years. How could Augustine not be proud? Furthermore, Augustine had many epic experts under him. His army was larger than William's. What did he have to be afraid of? On top of that, there was a spy like Mucka Red. What did Augustine have to be afraid of? He was only 28 years old, but he had accomplished such a great feat and taken control of a nation. Why was he not confident? It had to be known. Only complete failure would cause a person to grow or fall. Augustine had not encountered a fatal setback, and he was far from the shrewdness and wisdom of his previous life. Of course, the crucial point was that Augustine had never fought with the elfin army. It could even be said that many human nations on the legendary continent had forgotten the true combat power of the elfin army. In the Second Era, the elves had ruled the gods' continent, but the Third Era belonged to the humans. The humans were the victors of the current era, and the history books were written by them. But many historians had greatly underestimated the combat power of the elves. This caused many human nations to underestimate the elves. In the end, some duchies, grand duchies, and even a few kingdoms could not come into contact with the elves. They could only understand the elves through history books. They only knew that the elves were mysterious, but they did not know how powerful they were, of course. Some powerful kingdoms and empires would definitely face history correctly. They would even remember the power of the elves. They would recognize the strengths of the threat and attack the weaknesses of the threat. They would strive to prevent the elves from leaving the forest forever. After a short rest with 2,000 elites, William cautiously continued to track Augustine's army. He believed that as long as he did not make any rash moves, he would not lose everything. If he won the War of the Giant Dragons, then in version 1.0, he would welcome the greatest fruits. It would lay a solid foundation for his rise in the future. Time passed quickly. Lautner led 4,500 people on 13 large ships. They sailed along the coastline at a much faster speed. They were about to reach the snowy mountains of the East Sea. They did not hide this trip because these ships did not dare to go deep into the sea. After all, the large ships that were built could only be used as large fishing boats. They were far from the level of warships. But an epic warship was already halfway built. The overall structure was almost complete. Now all that was left was dragon bones. Lautner finally understood why William did not use some good materials as the dragon bones. If that was the case, the epic warship would have been completed long ago. That's because his true goal is to slay the dragon. Lautner could not help but clench his fists. His blood was boiling. Slay the dragon. This was the dream of every man on the legendary continent. The title of Dragon Slayer was an honor that would accompany him for life. It was hard for him to imagine when William had such a plan. Half a year ago, he had been looking for a shipbuilder. But after he found a moonlight elven grandmaster shipbuilder, the shipyard could only build some large fishing boats. They had been building the hull of the warship, but the materials used are unimaginably expensive. Lautner was William's executive officer. He knew almost everything that William knew. Half a year ago, there were nearly 200,000 gold coins in the warehouse of the City of Dawn. But William had spent nearly 80,000 gold coins on the epic warship. Even the existing materials, such as mithril, fine copper, and fine iron, were thrown into the warship as if they were scrap metal. Also, the expensive black iron would, according to William, the quality was not enough. Then he would make up for it with quantity. William wanted to forcefully build the warship into an epic warship. He wanted to reach the upper limit of what a grandmaster shipbuilder could build. In short, this epic warship was more expensive than half of the City of Dawn. If I add the dragon bones that belonged to the great dragon, Lautner was in a trance. He looked at the snowy mountains of the East Sea that were about to reach the shore and muttered, "If I can really do this, that warship will be invincible in this sea." Chapter 109. The next morning, the moment the sun rose from the horizon, the prelude to the dragon-slaying war had begun. At the foot of the snow mountains of the East Sea, the terrain was higher and the vegetation was sparse. It was like entering a small forest from a primeval forest. The closer one was to the snow mountains of the East Sea, the more it was so. However, more than 8,000 orcs and gnolls had been lured into the trap by Mucka Red. Mucka Red had informed them that his great master, Clystras, had awakened and had a mission for the two chiefs. At the same time, he wanted them to bring the strongest tribesmen. Logically speaking, the chiefs of the two clans would be suspicious of such a strange order. This was because when their master gave orders, he would never meet with other trash. Only the chiefs would have the opportunity to meet their master. But suspicion was just suspicion. They did not dare to refuse. If they did not obey their master's orders, they would only be facing destruction. Clystra's was their master. He was the only king of this world, the only giant dragon. His Majesty made all the clans submit to him. Therefore, the warriors of the two clans all carried their personal equipment and stepped into the trap recklessly, while the two human legions suddenly attacked from all directions. After all, Mucka Red could not use the excuse that they could not wear their equipment. But even if they wore their equipment, they were still unprepared. They were immediately torn apart by the human armies who were ready to charge. Even though the two orc clans were fully equipped with equipment and weapons, they were facing two of the most elite legions of the Iron Nation. In a situation where their numbers were equal, they could not resist at all. Very quickly, their formation was torn apart by the Iron Nation's army. The roars, wails, and roars were deafening. This was a one-sided massacre. The news of this battle would spread throughout the snow mountains of the EC. When the other clans heard about it, they would naturally rush over to support them. Augustine needed sacrifices and not to destroy all the giant dragon clans. After all, these two armies were far from enough. The two clans brought their defeated soldiers back to the forest. The remaining corpses and those who were still alive were dragged away by the human armies. Augustine led his troops towards the dragon's cave halfway up the mountain. It was the entrance of the cave at an altitude of 5,000 meters. When he led his troops to the entrance of the dragon's cave, they could feel the environment of the giant dragon. It was a magma cave that was more than 100 meters in length, width, and height. As soon as they arrived at the entrance, they could feel waves of heat assaulting their faces. The dark red interior of the cave gave off an oppressive feeling. The snow mountain of the EC was a dormant volcano. However, this was all because of the fire dragon, Cleistras. As long as he was in the cave, he could absorb the flame energy in the magma. Volcanoes could boil with magma, but when the fire magic was extracted, it could not become an active volcano. Of course, the fire dragon could also continue to grow in a deep sleep. For a dragon, closing and opening its eyes, over 10 years had passed, and he had also leveled up over 10 times. Becoming stronger was just that simple. However, this was the laziest way to become stronger. Are you sure it can't hear you? Augustine looked into the depths of the cave a few times, but he did not find the fire dragon. However, he was indeed a little afraid. After all, it was a fire dragon. Even the weakest fire dragon was difficult to kill. Mucka Red was also worried. He said anxiously, "The fire dragon can't hear us, but my boundary can only block sound. It can't stop the spread of the smell of blood. However, I still need your soldiers to place all the corpses on the altar at the entrance. Do it quickly. I have to set up the magic array before he wakes up. Hurry, hurry up and throw them on the altar. Throw them all over there," Augustine shouted. At the same time, there were traces of the giant dragon clan at the foot of the mountain. They did not rush up immediately. Instead, they were gathering and preparing for battle. Augustine clenched his fists. He looked at Mucka Red and said coldly, "I will send an army to block the entrance of the cave. If your magic array is not effective, we will all die. However, before I die, I will definitely kill you. We are all in the same boat. Don't try to scare each other. I have lived for so many years. Do you think I am scared? Remember, when I activate the magic array, the fire dragon will definitely wake up. Remember, even if you have to sacrifice your entire army, you have to help me hold it back. If not, you will not be able to activate the altar. Just wait to be burned to death by the dragon's breath." Mucka Red laughed coldly. He did not care what Augustine thought of him. He strode towards the altar, raised his magic staff with both hands, and smashed it into the center of the altar. Bam! A dense stream of black magic spread out with a loud bang. Thick black tentacles appeared from the altar. Those black tentacles were like invisible energy, absorbing the flesh and souls of the orcs and gnolls. However, the altar had just been activated. A rumbling sound came from the depths of the dragon cave. Augustine's mouth twitched. He could only shout, "Shield warriors, go forward. Archers, stay behind. The rest of you, prepare the heavy crossbows." Then, He looked at a small team that had not made a move yet. There were only over 100 people in this team. They had different equipment, but the quality was very high. They seemed to be in groups of 3 to 5, but they were wary of each other. One of them was a man in black armor. His entire body was burning with black combat energy. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, we will definitely make a move when the time comes. We want to kill this dragon as well, but we don't want to be cannon fodder." Adolf is right. We, the bounty hunters, are not here to die. We will make a move at the crucial moment. Commander of the Iron Nation, are you still afraid that we will not abide by the agreement? A half-elf with 3 scars on his face sneered, as if he was making fun of Augustine. Augustine thought for a while and remained silent. Behind him, there was also a small team of 50 elites. They were the legendary boss team. Behind him, a legion commander secretly said something to him. Augustine stroked his chin and squinted his eyes as he smiled. "My execution team will attack with you. No one will be cannon fodder. If anyone dares to sneak away, don't blame me for being merciful." As he spoke, he threw his hood to the ground. He was wearing purplish-black armor, and a slender and slightly curved dragon slayer sword hung at his waist. When the others saw this scene and the aura that he released, they all gulped. Everyone knew that Augustine was very strong. But now, they understood that he was not very strong. He was really strong. At least, he had become an advanced professional faster than them. Just as these people were arguing in the dragon's cave, no one noticed that some abnormally agile elves were climbing the steep, snowy mountains. Not only did they avoid the sight of the great dragon clan, but they also reached the top of the dragon cave. There were not many. There were only 130 elves. After all, there were very few elves with such skills. Those who were chosen by William were NPCs with advanced bloodlines and above. William and the others lay on the snow and held their breaths. They did not say a word. He was waiting. He did not believe that the great dragon would die so quickly. He also wanted to kill the great dragon, not just snatch the great dragon's carcass. Although there is no experience reward for killing the great dragon, I want the title of Dragon Slayer, legendary points, and the endowment. William clenched his fists. Of course, there was no need to let the other elves die in order to snatch the great dragon's carcass. It was enough for William to take the risk alone. In short, snatching the carcass was a sure win. If not, it was not a loss. Chapter 110. The awakening of the giant dragon, Karistras, occurred at the same time as the Yamashita clan's attack. The elite army of Iron Nation consisted of 1,000 shield-bearers in 3 rows. They blocked the front lines and welcomed the attacks of the orcs, gnomes, and even a few demons. However, what attracted the most attention was not the tribes or their leaders. Instead, it was the dragon speakers who had been bestowed the dragon bloodline by the giant dragon. There was 1 human and 2 half-elves. The 3 of them were not covered in dragon scales, but their eyes had turned into golden pupils that were filled with majesty and fear. When they looked at others, their eyes seemed to be burning with golden light. The commander of the 3rd Legion was Aaron, who was in charge of guarding the entrance of the dragon's cave. He was a dual-wielding warrior with epic bloodline. He watched helplessly as the army of the clans was about to charge over, but he remained unmoved. The other soldiers of the 3rd Legion did the same. As elites, they had good mental fortitude, until the tens of thousands of clans came close. Aaron shouted, "Release the arrows!" Buzz! The shield-bearers in front immediately changed their formation and made way for the heavy-duty crossbows behind them. 10 crossbows shot horizontally downwards. The 2-meter-long steel arrows whistled through the air and instantly pierced through the enemies of the front. Their bodies, which were still alive, were sent flying hundreds of meters in the air. The destructive power of 10 heavy-duty crossbows was not much. At most, it could injure 100 to 200 people. However, the gaps and lines of blood that the 10 steel arrows created in the army undoubtedly caused great pressure to the giant dragon's clans. This kind of war weapon was especially important in suppressing the morale of the enemy's army. Ignoring the heavy-duty crossbows, the thousands of arrows that were shot from the sky were also very troublesome for the clans who had battle energy shields. After all, the defensive power of their battle energy shields was only average apart from a few special legions that had a unified army. The other legions would all have at least 3 types of soldiers, at least 3. They were shield bearers, swordsmen, and rangers. The gods' continent did not have a pure profession like the archer. Rangers had already replaced the archer profession, and they also had decent close combat abilities. Shield bearers were naturally meat shields. They had to be at the forefront and receive the enemy's repeated attacks until the enemy could no longer hold on. At that point, the shield bearers would win. Swordsmen were the key killers who would quickly kill the enemies who broke through the formation. They could even take the place of the shield bearers who died and raise their shields to ensure that the defensive formation was not broken. Of course, a swordsman would usually carry different equipment depending on the type of enemy they faced. If they were facing cavalry, their main weapon would be a spear and their secondary weapon would be a saber. The rangers were in charge of shooting arrows at the back. When they ran out of arrows, or when the commander gave the order to stop shooting, they would be free to shoot or carry their weapons to help their comrades. The shield bearers were in front, the swordsmen were in the middle, and the rangers were at the back. As long as the legion commander commanded them well, every legion of 3,000 people would be able to display great combat power. The 3rd Legion of the Iron Nation was naturally not a problem. Their formation was extremely compact. They formed a sturdy tortoise shell at the entrance of the dragon's cave. 1,000 shield bearers and 1,000 swordsmen formed a 3-layered defensive formation. Not only did they have the terrain advantage, but they could also attack the great dragon clans with their battle energy. For a moment, the clans who were attacking the mountain rolled down from the mountainside. They even knocked down a few unlucky ones. Fresh blood stained the rocks and melted the ice. Their battle energy left ravines on the ground and shone in midair. The battle energy had reached its climax in a short period of time. William did not know what the situation inside the dragon's cave was like, but the elves who were climbing above the cave could feel the tremors. It was as if the great dragon was roaring. It was as if a huge creature was about to soar into the sky, but it fell heavily to the ground. William covered his head with snow and crawled forward. He only revealed his eyes to observe the battlefield. He could not help but inhale a breath of cold air. Was the 3rd Legion of the Iron Nation that powerful? Just after he finished his first mouthful of milk, 3 tall figures wearing simple and crude armor suddenly rushed out of the clan army with heavy steps. Trolls! William narrowed his eyes. The 3 powerful trolls swung their heavy and huge wolf-tooth maces, sending the shield bearer in front of them flying into the air and smashing him into the crowd. Some attacks and arrows hit the trolls, but these injuries were not enough. Before the 3 trolls died, they had penetrated the 2 layers of the Iron Nation's shield bearer's defense. The surrounding area was in ruins. The Legion commander, Aaron, roared ferociously, "Fill up the gaps." But it was too late. The clans behind the trolls were like locusts. They quickly occupied the 3 gaps. Aaron clenched his fist and suddenly waved his hand. Hundreds of swordsmen wearing silver armor stepped on the heads of the shield bearers and charged out. In midair, streaks of sword energy swept out and penetrated tens of meters in front of the shield bearers. In just a few seconds, the gaps that the clans had just occupied were instantly reoccupied. But the 3rd Legion, whose formation was unstable, faced another crisis. One after another, the leaders of the clans charged into the battle formation, knocking the shield bearers at the very front and causing them to fall. They endured the ridiculous damage and advanced courageously, but they were not the most important ones. It was the 3 dragon speakers. Aaron wanted to support them, but he was not only the Legion commander, but also the commander. He could only watch helplessly as the 3 dragon speakers charged into the army formation like Tyrannosaurus. There were no dragon scales on the surface of their bodies because the dragon scales were hidden under their skin. It was as if they had an additional layer of armor, giving them an indestructible body. The 3 of them were surrounded by dense, magical auras. They suddenly spat out. Boom! 3 10-meter-long fire snakes wreaked havoc in the 3rd Legion. The entire sky turned red. At that moment, the battle energy on the bodies of tens of unlucky warriors was extinguished, and their bodies were burned. Tens of warriors could only wail and roll on the ground. They tried to extinguish the magical flames on their bodies. Damn the dragon speakers. Aaron pulled out the long sword that was stabbed into the ground and was about to walk forward. The guard next to him hurriedly grabbed him and said in a low voice, "Sir, you can't go. You have to stabilize the morale of the troops. The deputy commander has already gone. The key is whether they can kill that fire dragon. Our goal is to prevent anyone from entering the dragon cave. As long as the fire dragon is dead, these clans will naturally retreat out of fear." Aaron suddenly grabbed the guard by the neck and held him in front of him. The guard struggled in panic. Luckily, Aaron only glanced at him and threw him to the side. Then he murmured, "I hope they can be faster. Otherwise, all my elite soldiers will really die." Aaron was a true soldier, a soldier loyal to the king, and a soldier who loved his soldiers like his own children. But in the next moment, rumble, the entrance of the dragon cave continued to collapse, as if a colossal creature was continuously slamming into the entrance. Roar! Almost half of the legion turned their heads in fear. Even Aaron did the same. However, they still saw that the fire dragon, who was covered in blood and had lost an unknown number of scales, was already rolling its enormous body towards them. Aaron barely dodged, but hundreds of warriors who could not dodge in time were all crushed in a meat paste. Now, William leaped out. He descended from the sky like a thunder god. At this moment, time had come to a standstill. Many people looked up at the head that suddenly appeared, the dragon slayer. Chapter 111. The battle aura slash that was flickering with fatal killing power descended from the sky with the power to destroy everything. It seemed, justice from the heavens. Almost everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the scene in disbelief when Charistra's rolled out. Hope reignited in his heart. He thought he wasn't fated to die. He had survived. This was because he had already seen his own clan. As long as he had the chance to recuperate, he would once again roar across the entire legendary continent. He would use his anger to burn the entire Iron Nation and even the human nation. However, just as it fell to the ground and was about to raise its gigantic head, a chilling, murderous aura came from above. He didn't have time to dodge. He felt his head sink, and an indescribable pain filled his mind. Bang! An explosion of lightning and battle energy was produced. Countless people watched the scene with their own eyes. They saw the fire dragon's skull being blasted open by the thunderstorm, and pieces of scales flickering with electricity were sent flying, smashing countless sword-wielding people half to death. After an unknown period of time, along with a loud bang, the mighty sky overlord Coriolstras, the strong and enormous fire dragon, crashed heavily to the ground. His golden eyes that had already been extinguished proved that he had fallen meanwhile. The man who looked like the god of thunder stood on the dragon's head and slowly pulled out the sword that was stabbed into the dragon's head. He looked around at everyone and chuckled. "This dragon belongs to me." After William's dark gold sword of thunder was destroyed, he replaced it with an epic sword of thunder. There weren't many changes. The only difference was that his attributes and special effects had become stronger. However, it had a fourth special effect, a special effect with a name. Thunderstorm. Your next attack will produce a thunderstorm effect, causing lightning damage x5. Consumption, none. Cooldown, 10 minutes. William only had one attack against the Great Dragon, and that was the battle energy cut. However, he had superimposed the Light of Dawn on it, which was to superimpose 50% of all the battle energy on a certain skill, so that the damage would be extremely powerful. Coupled with the thunderstorm, the damage caused was simply indescribable. Headshot, thunder damage, fatal damage, and headshot damage. When all of them stacked together, he dealt 27,340 damage. However, this was the last straw that broke the dragon's back. Augustine, Muckared, and the rest of the injured dragon-slaying legion looked at the dead fire dragon in disbelief. Their hearts were burning with rage. "Lord of Dawn, William, you deserve to die," Augustine shouted, because the real dragon slayer had appeared, and he was born in front of tens of thousands of people. It could be said, William's final attack could almost cancel out all the results of their earlier desperate battle. At this time, no one would remember who had severely injured the dragon. No one would remember that they had beaten the dragon to the brink of death. They would only remember the man who had beheaded the dragon. Kobe at his peak, such a thief. William shrugged his shoulders at them. He really wanted to tell them that in his previous life, he was a legendary casual player who had fought for bosses. He had countless bounties on his head. He jumped down from a dragon's head and waved his hand again in front of everyone's eyes. The dragon's corpse was gone. Gosh! The dragon clansmen widened their eyes, and their mouths twitched again. Augustine and Mucka Red looked at each other. It was a space treasure, and it was a large and independent space treasure. William lowered his head and touched his second ring. He had borrowed it from Moses, and he had to return it. However, he was in a dangerous situation. Aaron, whose eyes were burning with rage, led his personal guards to surround him. It could be said that he was surrounded by thousands of people, and he had nowhere to run. The dragon clansmen retreated. Even the loyal dragon speakers chose to retreat at this moment, because their master was dead. He had been beheaded by the Lord of the City of Dawn. Even his corpse was gone, and they could not obtain any benefits. Why would they fight? Wouldn't it be better to go home and beat up their children to vent their anger? The densely packed dragon clansmen quickly retreated. They did not even bring along the corpses of their clansmen. Augustine walked into the encirclement with a cold expression. His gaze was sinister as he said, "Do you really think that you can escape after slaying the dragon?" William strolled in the enemy's formation. He ignored Augustine and the powerful bounty hunters. He stood on a huge rock and surveyed his surroundings. Did you think that he would be afraid? No, William was never a coward. The corners of William's lips curled up. I should be asking if you can escape. What do you mean? Do you think that you can escape with only 2,000 pursuers? Augustine was not a fool. He already knew the number of pursuers, but because there were too few pursuers, he did not want to bother with them. William raised the sword of thunder and pointed the blade at the thousands of pursuers surrounding him. That's right. You've been surrounded by me. The nightmare warrior, whose body was burning with black battle energy, was so angry that he almost laughed. Fortunately, he was afraid that the black battle energy would explode, so he did not laugh. But he still mocked. Is this a joke? Could it be that after slaying the dragon, the Lord of the City of Dawn has become retarded? Someone joked. But before the others could continue mocking him, a soldier suddenly ran over and shouted, "We've been surrounded. There are 2,000 people climbing the mountain from the east, and there are 4,000 to 5,000 people coming from the south." At the same time, the 130 elfin experts above the cave crashed to the ground. They quickly gathered around William. Augustine fell in a deep thought. Mucka Red fell in a deep thought. Aaron touched his face and thought, "Thank goodness it doesn't hurt." The others were dumbfounded. They had been surrounded. How can it be? The south is the sea. Augustine had just finished speaking when he slapped his face to wake himself up. It was not the time to think about how those people had arrived. Instead, it was the decision he had to make. Augustine looked at William, the Lord of the City of Dawn, who had been surrounded. He knew that this might be the best time in his life to kill William. But when he looked at the remaining 3,000 men, he could not help but shake his head. But in the next moment, he was not willing to give up. He roared in anger, F***CK, kill that idiot William for me. Augustine took the lead and tore through the ground like a ray of fire. He instantly collided with William. Countless people chose to charge at this moment. They surged towards the 100 people who had been surrounded. Augustine chose to kill William at this moment. He was not willing to sacrifice himself for others. Opportunity knocks, but it won't come again. Today, even if I have to sacrifice the 2 legions of Iron Nation, I want you and these experts to die here. Augustine and William had just started fighting, and wounds appeared on their bodies. Both of them had powerful equipment. They had gold equipment sets and epic weapons. But William did not want to cause too many losses. The moment they started fighting, he suddenly laughed. "If you want to kill me, why don't you perish together with me? Take my magic cannon scroll." Upon hearing this, Mucka Red disappeared in a flash. Augustine saw that the quick-witted Mucka Red had escaped so quickly, and he almost peed his pants. He immediately shouted and retreated. His companions also retreated at the same time. But the black scroll did not explode. He just turned into a wisp of black smoke and suddenly disappeared. Augustine was enraged and wanted to whip William's corpse 100 times. He felt something on his face. Augustine felt that something was wrong and turned his head. A horrifying, which was lying on his back and licking his face with a tongue full of maggots. Ah, ah, ah. Tragic screams reverberated in the snowy mountains of the East Sea. Chapter 112. Ah! Augustine screamed in pain. This handsome and powerful legendary boss was almost driven crazy. Everyone around him hid far away and looked at him with disdain. A witch with rotten flesh was crawling behind Augustine. Disgusting black maggots kept crawling out of her body. She was using her rotten tongue to lick Augustine's face. Augustine was so frightened that he unleashed his battle energy. He looked like a man on fire, but his battle energy had no effect on the witch. The witch had suppressed his strength and attributes. Although she did not cause any harm to him, it was still terrible. What the hell is this? Augustine resisted the urge to look back, but the wet and slippery feeling on his face, as if there were bugs crawling on his face, always made him inadvertently fantasize. "My lord, is it a curse?" Someone replied in fear. At this moment, a warrior ran over in a panic. "My lord, our brothers on both sides can't hold on any longer. A few hundred of them have died." They were not the only ones who realized this. The other bounty hunters did not want to continue fighting. Although the Iron Nation had collected half of the bounty, the Great Dragon was gone. It meant that the rest of the bounty was gone. If they continued fighting with the Dawn Army, they would not have a good ending. Even if they killed William, how many of them would survive? Wouldn't the Iron Nation be able to bully the bounty hunters? The Nightmare Warrior, Adolf, was the first to escape. He transformed into a bolt of black lightning and went down the mountain in the west. The bounty hunters who were lucky enough to survive also stopped negotiating with Augustine and fled with Adolf. After all, not only was the Nightmare Warrior powerful, but he was also very astute. Every time something went wrong, he would escape faster than anyone else. This was the main reason why he could survive until now. Because he was not greedy. When the bounty hunters escaped, the morale of the Iron Nation soldiers plummeted. After all, how would the soldiers on both sides know if the escaping fellows were comrades or bounty hunters? When Augustine saw this scene, he glared at William and waved his hand. "Retreat to the west. Yulin, lead the troops and hold them off for 10 minutes. After Augustine gave this order, he dragged his battered body, carrying the witch on his back, and ran away in panic. He was really afraid that this curse would not be lifted, and his future days would be terrible. Alan clenched his fists. He knew that if everyone ran away together, there would only be more casualties. Only someone could be the scapegoat. He shouted, "Everyone in the Third Corps, hold on and protect our allies. F*CKU. Brothers of the Third Legion, retreat. Augustine is messing with us." An even louder voice suddenly spread throughout the battlefield. The soldiers who wanted to escape wanted to receive a new order. They watched the soldiers of the Second Legion leave and joined them decisively. The cries for escape grew louder. More and more people were shouting that Augustine had killed people. Aaron gradually found the source of the voice. It was the Lord of Dawn, who was being protected by more than 100 people. Shameless bastard. Alan clenched his fist and cursed in his heart. But there was no turning back now. He could only retreat as well. As for the military punishment, he would think about it if he could survive. When the Iron Nation legions retreated, they avoided William, who was in the middle of the battlefield. Coincidentally, William did not give the order to attack. Some of the slower ones were about to pass by a group of elves. The Lord of the City of Dawn suddenly walked out from the crowd of experts. He hooked his finger at the tens of unlucky ones and said, "Why are you running? Where do you think you can run to?" A senior captain gradually stopped. When he saw the cold gazes of the crowd, he frowned and said, "Oh, **T. Fortunately, he was also a hoodlum. He threw his weapon away and lay on the ground, not moving. He was tired. The tens of soldiers under him also stopped running. They threw their weapons on the ground and took off their equipment. They were only wearing undergarments. They trembled and huddled together, rubbing against each other to generate heat. They had no choice. If they ran too slowly, they would not be able to find a suitable escape route. They would either die or surrender. When the two strong reinforcements arrived at the entrance of the dragon's lair, Lautner heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that William was safe. "It's good that you're safe. Are we still going to pursue the defeated soldiers?" "Of course, we'll pursue them for an hour. No matter how many we kill or capture, we'll retreat by sea." Under William's command, other than his personal guards and the 130 elite soldiers, a total of more than 5,000 people attacked. Should not pursue a cornered enemy? The prerequisite was that they were afraid of an ambush. The Iron Nation legions did not have any ambushes. Regardless of whether they captured or killed, they would not suffer any losses. It's a pity that we did not manage to kill Augustine and Mucker Red. William was also very surprised. He did not expect Mucker Red to appear here. It was a pity that he did not manage to kill this troublemaking Dark Warlock. But now is not the time to pursue them. Guard the entrance of the lair. Prevent the great dragon clansmen from taking advantage of the chaos. After William finished speaking, he immediately rushed into the dragon's lair. He wanted to plunder the great dragon's treasures, because he did not believe that Augustine had the time to plunder the dragon's lair. But he could not waste too much time. The great dragon clansmen had retreated because they were afraid of the great dragon. When they regained their senses, they would naturally come back to plunder the dragon's lair. William was very fast. He sprinted in the dragon's lair without stopping. The temperature in the air was also rising. Without the great dragon's suppression, the lava in the volcano started to boil. It was as if he was walking in a sea of fire. But he was very fast. It was as if he had foresight. He could easily avoid the eruption of lava and even places that might contain lava. When he reached a wide lava river, he stopped for a while. Then, he leaped up and landed on a protruding black rock in the lava river. He did not stop for long. He leaped up again. The lava covered the rock under his feet, and he landed on another rock. Green smoke was emitting from William's feet. He jumped agilely from rock to rock until he crossed the lava river. At this moment, there were no more obstacles in front of him. William had arrived at the location of the fire dragon's treasure. "I drowned in the lava countless times in my previous life." William pouted. In his previous life, he had encountered the instance dungeon of the snowy mountains of the East Sea. Other than the legendary instance dungeon, where there was a 1 in 1,000 chance of obtaining dragon's blood, most of the instance dungeons of the snowy mountains of the East Sea could only obtain dragon scales. Of course, dragon scales had different qualities. The more difficult the instance dungeon, the higher the quality of the dragon scales. This was also the reason why he wanted to challenge the Great Dragon's instance dungeon. He wanted to forge equipment. But since this place had become an instance dungeon, it meant that the fire dragon had been killed. Even if the players challenged the instance dungeon countless times, they would not obtain many rewards. Even the Great Dragon's treasure was just some treasure chests. Perhaps there would be some high-quality gems, equipment, gold coins, and so on. But when William turned a corner, when he saw the small mountain of gold coins, treasure chests, and gems, he could not help but widen his eyes. Gosh! Chapter 113. The way William looked at money was no different from how a woman looked at cosmetics. He dived into the pile of gold coins and threw handfuls of them into his spatial ring. I knew that slaying a dragon would make me rich, but I didn't expect it to be this easy. William's eyes gradually turned golden. In his previous life, it was not that players could not slay dragons, but only the top clubs and a group of professional players could have the slightest chance of slaying a dragon. Otherwise, it would be impossible for players to defeat a dragon of the same tier and level in a one-on-one fight. However, even if a top-tier guild mobilized all of its members, the chances of successfully slaying a dragon were still very low. The margin for error was also frighteningly low. Slaying a dragon was no easier than playing in a professional competition. It could be said, ganging up on a legendary NPC like William was 100 times easier than slaying a dragon. Most importantly, players' attributes weren't that overpowered. Aside from a few explosive skills, it was very difficult to break through their defense. Fortunately, William's looting speed was not slow. Anything that could be touched by magic and battle energy could be stuffed into the space ring. In just 5 minutes, nothing was left of the so-called giant dragon's treasure. Not even a copper coin was left behind. After all, being diligent and thrifty was a traditional virtue of the Chinese people. Wastage was a must. After that, William walked around the place. When he saw that there were no other treasures left, he chose to leave. On the way back, it was just as easy. When William arrived at the entrance of a dragon cave, he did not discover that the great dragon clansman had returned. He did not want to wait any longer. He was afraid that an accident might occur, so he led the group and ran towards the coastline. When they saw more than a dozen large ships docked in the sea, William heaved a sigh of relief. It was only now that he had the time to check what he had gained from slaying the dragons and the treasures. Prompt: you have dealt 27,340 damage to Caristras. You have successfully killed Caristras. Hint: you have dealt 9% damage to Cleostras. You have received 78,300 experience points. Prompt: you have successfully killed the level 69 legendary fire dragon. Prompt: you have obtained the beginner dragon slayer title. Prompt: you have obtained 1 legend point, Southeast Territory. Prompt: you have obtained the talent Thunder God's Fury. After William carefully observed the many rewards, he took a deep breath, held his forehead, and squatted by the sea for a long time before he recovered his senses. Beginner Dragon Slayer. Title requirement: deal a fatal blow to any legendary giant dragon, and let more than 100 intelligent creatures see it and acknowledge that the giant dragon was killed by you. Quality: gold, iron, bronze, silver, gold, purple, orange. Strength plus 15 agility plus 15 physical strength plus 20 intelligence plus 10 charm plus 30 special effect. Your damage to any creature with dragon blood increases by 15%. Special effect: you have a certain amount of deterrence to any magical beast below the high level, preventing them from taking the initiative to attack you. Special effect: you will be even more attractive to any dragon blood creature. Description: although you have become a dragon slayer due to your peak skill in stealing kills, you have also gained the hatred of thousands of NPCs. William ignored the complaints of the game mainframe. He was now an NPC. What did it mean that he had gained the hatred of an NPC? Did he care? No. Thus, William happily hung the Dragon Slayer title on his head. The NPCs could not see the title, but they could feel an invisible pressure. They could vaguely sense that this handsome man in front of them should be very extraordinary. If they thought about it, perhaps he was the legendary Dragon Slayer warrior? But the players can see it. After the open beta, the players will at least have their insight on me. A Golden Dragon Slayer title will definitely dazzle their eyes. Needless to say, there will definitely be many players who will kneel and lick my boots. William laughed mischievously and checked his legend level. Dragon Slayer Legend, level +1. Restriction: this legend level has the highest effect in the southeastern region. Description: the Lord of the City of Dawn, William Blackleaf, killed a middle-level legendary fire dragon at the snowy mountains of the East Sea on December 13th, 2333, in the Third Era. Description: this dragon-slaying battle was witnessed by tens of thousands of intelligent creatures, and it will be spread to the southeastern region by them. Without a doubt, I've gained a lot this time. As long as my legend level gradually spreads, I might be able to attract some powerful NPCs to join me. William stroked his chin and looked at his new endowment. Endowment: Fury of Thunder. When you face a creature that is 10 levels higher than you, you can sacrifice 50% of your health points to activate the Fury of Thunder. In the next 3 seconds, your next attack has a 20% chance of increasing the attack power by X 300% and causing X 300% thunder attribute damage. Strong. Is it strong? After William saw this active endowment, he gradually sank into deep thought. It was very obvious. The Fury of Thunder was a little something. It was formed by the mainframe based on the moves of Kobe at his peak. It was no different from giving him a second move that could kill someone instantly. But sacrificing 50% of his health points for such a small probability was very unfriendly to an unlucky person. It's not very useful. William sighed. He still preferred those practical things. It was best if all the data was placed in front of him. For example, he knew that if he hit the head, it would definitely cause a double critical hit. For example, if he hit the head, it would definitely cause fatal damage. It did not matter how much damage it would cause. Anyway, a lot of damage was enough. He did not like this kind of sacrificing of his life. It was almost as if he was risking his life. Of course, if there's really no other choice, and I can't deal any damage to high-level monsters, if I use all my stacked moves, along with the Fury of Thunder, I'll be able to break through the monster's defense and deal considerable or even fatal damage. William stroked his chin. To him, this endowment was something that he would never use normally. Unless he faced a boss that he could not break through, then he could gamble on the probability. I really want to kill that unicorn. William was thinking about whether he could kill the little princess's unicorn. A large group of people suddenly walked out of the forest. Without a doubt, it was the Dawn Army. William glanced over. Not only did they not lose any soldiers, but they had also captured many naked captives. Get on the ship and take them away. Then throw them into the mine. Tonight, we'll hold the dragon-slaying banquet. Under William's command, the soldiers of the Dawn Army cheered. This was not only a great victory. More importantly, the Lord had become a dragon-slaying warrior. Without a doubt, the banquet in the City of Dawn would be extremely grand. At the same time, another instance dungeon crystal appeared in William's hand. Giant Dragon's Lair. Chapter 114. La 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 la, glittering gold coins, jewels, gems, and so on. In short, anything that glowed with light fell from the space ring into the treasury. The treasury of the City of Dawn did not have many assets. Even though William had robbed the Iron Nation of many gold coins, the expansion of the army, development, and the construction of the battleship in the second half of the year had almost emptied William's treasury. Now that he had become rich after slaying the dragon, his funds were once again replenished. Lautner and Odom widened their eyes as they watched William continuously pour out gold coins, forming a small mountain of gold. Odom licked his lips and sighed. At least 130,000 to 40,000 gold coins. This does not include the value of the rare gems and metals. Lautner nodded in a relaxed manner. No matter what, there are almost 180,000 gold coins in the treasury. It's enough for us to develop for a while. That's right. In the future, we have to establish good relations with the winged people and half-elves. At the same time, we have to interact more with the new Blue Moon town. We have to increase the number of merchant teams and transactions. After William gave his orders, they nodded and walked out of the treasury. The previous evening, William had led his army back to his hometown. His subordinates had told him about the dragon slaying. Hundreds of thousands of civilians in the City of Dawn were in an uproar. Besides the official banquet, the other civilians also took out delicious food and wine and placed them on the streets. The entire banquet lasted until the next morning. When William went to the treasury in the morning, regardless of whether they were humans, elves, half-elves, or dwarves, they looked at William with completely different gazes. Originally, many people only had respect, fear, or curiosity for William. But at this moment, most people's view of the Lord had changed from respect to worship. Some fanatical fans even became William's believers. For example, Alec. After all, most of the civilians were uncultured and had no knowledge. Their purpose in life was nothing more than to eat and carry on their family line. As the Lord of the City of Dawn, William had been brainwashing the civilians every few days. Now, he had also accomplished the feat of slaying the dragon. The hearts of the people were hopeful. William glanced at the character panel. Countdown to the start of version 1. 0 open beta. 12 days, 13 hours, 22 minutes. The open beta is approaching. The player's equipment is also a problem. William raised his eyebrows and asked Odom to look for him. Sir, what's wrong? Odom, the dwarf prince of the Lonely Mountain, was now the chief butler of the City of Dawn. He was in charge of all kinds of logistics. It could be said, it was a waste of William's talent. However, they still did not have enough manpower. William nodded at him and said, Inform all the blacksmiths to forge 30,000 sets of normal armor and 20,000 sets of superior armor and weapons. Odom's eyes lit up. Big business? You should know about those chosen ones who disappeared, right? The way they disappear is indeed untraceable. Many people disappear into thin air in the city, and I can't even find them. If I hadn't designed and built this city myself, I would have thought that there was a hole in the ground that I didn't know about. Odom didn't understand why the Lord called them the Chosen One. William waved his hand and let the blonde, wavy Odom come closer to talk. William whispered something into Odom's ear. Odom's expression kept changing from disbelief to shock, and then to disbelief. After a while, the blonde swallowed his saliva and said in a deep voice, "Is what my Lord said true? I had a dream half a year ago. Didn't I meet those chosen ones who can't die? It's up to you whether you believe it or not. After 10 days, if the chosen ones really arrive, it proves that what I said is true. And I believe that the will of heaven will be conveyed to everyone's mind. We're the chosen ones. Where do they come from?" Odom didn't understand. Although the chosen ones had various races, they were very different from him. William smiled mysteriously and patted his shoulder. "I don't know, but you just have to remember that the chosen ones won't affect the overall situation in a short period of time. If you want to control your own destiny, you can only rely on yourself. But the chosen ones won't die. You just have to make good use of them." "My lord, I understand." Odom left the conference hall with a serious expression. When he walked to the blacksmith's, his heart was heavy, but he was filled with emotions. If this was true, then wasn't the Lord the messenger of heaven? Otherwise, how could he know so many secrets in advance? For a moment, Odom hurriedly covered his mouth. It was good that he only knew about this. In the future, he would not tell anyone. After a beautiful fantasy, the affinity increased to 980 plus. It was only 20 points away from the maximum value. Roar, roar, the giant wild bear roared in the depths of the forest. In an instant, flocks of birds flew away, and wild beasts scurried in all directions. William rode on Big Bear and ran all the way south in the forest. Some commoners who were pulling carriages saw this scene and hurriedly gave way to the Lord in the middle of the road. Then, they watched the dragon slayer leave in admiration. A human youth who was less than 16 years old looked at the majestic Lord and shook his head. "I really want to kiss the Lord's shoes." An older middle-aged man retracted his gaze from William and kicked the youth's butt. He said disdainfully, "You brat, are you worthy? You still want to kiss the dragon slayer's shoes? Go and catch some fish. Go home and tie the net for me." The youth laughed and stood up. Then he said, "Father, I'm going to be 16 soon. I want to become a professional. I want to be loyal to the Lord. Or I can go to the sea to fish. I really don't want to catch prawns and frogs in the Rainbow Lake." The middle-aged father frowned. He looked at his determined son and sighed. "Then, let's see if you have the talent. The Lord has helped us earn a lot of money. If you really have the talent, we will strive to let you learn high-level secret manuals." "Thank you, Father. I must become a real warrior." This was the wish of many youths in the City of Dawn. They wanted to become professionals. Even if they could not be recruited into the army, there was a certain chance that they would be chosen as mercenaries. Or, even worse, they could go to the sea to fish. Because the fishermen on the sea often needed the strength of professionals. Especially since William had described the sea so well, many people were tempted. The 1-year-old giant wild bear was already a level 31 beginner magical beast. When stood up, it was nearly 5 meters tall. Its running speed was not slow, and it was full of explosive power. It was just a little lazy. Fortunately, Big Bear, 2 Bear, and 3 Bear did not listen to other people's instructions. But when faced with William's orders, they always completed them without any hesitation. It was not just because of the pet affinity. Moreover, because William now had the title of Dragon Slayer, the 3 Big Bears did not dare to have any thoughts of rebelling. They galloped all the way. After a full 2 hours, William finally arrived at the southernmost part of the continent. He also saw the endless magical sea. At the same time, William rode Big Bear and went straight to the huge shipyard. Chapter 115. If one had never been to the shipyard and dock of the City of Dawn, It would be hard to imagine how tall and big the super shipyard, which occupied an area of more than 10 football fields, was. It was even more unbelievable. Why would the city of Dawn build such a huge shipyard? There were 2,000 soldiers stationed here. They did not belong to any legion. Their duty was to protect the shipyard. Of course, these 2,000 soldiers also had to take care of the dock 3 kilometers away. If anything happened, the Taurans and the garrison at Rainbow Lake could immediately come to help. There were no golden beaches in the south of the city of Dawn. There were only hard reefs that were much higher than the sea level. Due to the geographical location, the sea was usually calm. Storms were rare. However, it was subtropical and at the edge of the coastline. Rain was inevitable. After William passed through the city gate and entered the wall, the sky above his head had already darkened. He saw that the rain was about to fall. He patted Big Bear's butt and let it follow the guards to shelter from the rain. Then he walked into the largest shipyard in the shipyard. Once he walked in, William could not help but raise his head to look at his super warship, the Dawn vessel. That was right. The 3-masted battleship in front of him had 3 decks. It was black and glowed with silver light. It was his super warship. It was 121 meters long and 32 meters wide. It could carry a legion for short trips and could accommodate 1,200 people for long trips. The deck and hull were mostly made of gold-quality black iron, wood mixed with mithril. The entire hull was almost entirely black and glowed with silver light. Other than sailing without sails, the second power source was 99 magical crystals. The estimated speed was between 180 to 260 nautical miles per hour. There were 108 cannons on both sides of the hull. After all, this world had gunpowder and the profession of cannon gunner. Magic cannons were too high-end. Other than the powerful human empires and a few elven kingdoms, no one else had them. But because the gnomes and dwarves had developed cannons, they supplemented the offensive and defensive capabilities of the grand duchies and kingdoms. They were considered strategic weapons in the middle stages of the game. The saltpeter mine was also listed as a national resource. Basically, there was no possibility of it being circulated. Fortunately, it is only version 1.0. Fortunately, it is only a beginner's village. If the Iron Nation and the Black Lava Nation had cannons, the City of Dawn would have no chance to develop. William sighed. The City of Dawn was not defenseless against cannons, but that required a stronger city wall. How could William have the mages to enchant the entire city wall? Was he going to befriend Moses? How could that be? This big shot definitely wouldn't do anything, and he didn't want to sell his body either. Fortunately, the area south of the City of Dawn was a super or vein on the legendary continent. The saltpeter or vein was not a problem. It was a pity that the dwarves that Odin had brought along did not have the inheritance of manufacturing cannons and gunpowder. Even if they had long been lost. Therefore, these 108 muzzles could only be used as arrow holes. But he had no choice. Until now, William had not found a cannon gunner. After all, it was a hidden occupation. It was rare, but it was really powerful. At this moment, it was a middle-aged elf wearing a silver-gray magic robe. William raised his eyebrows and smiled. Andrew, it looks like the Dawn vessel is about to be completed. Greetings, Lord. Andrew was the royal shipbuilder of the Moonlight Elves. He was a grandmaster who could build epic battleships. Strategic items like battleships were different from equipment. They were not divided into levels. Epic battleships were epic battleships. Even in the human empires, they were treasures. Otherwise, William would not have spent so much money. All the resources added together would be hundreds of thousands of gold coins. He could even build half a set of middle-level legendary equipment. It could even be said that it was not easy for the human empires to build such battleships. This was because shipbuilders and materials were a problem. Most importantly, the human countries in the legendary continent did not invest much in the maritime industry. Andrew was a level 56 wood magician. His secondary profession was far more important than his main profession, and his main profession was mostly used to support his secondary profession. Otherwise, Andrew, who was already over 100 years old, wouldn't be so low in level. My lord, it's not as simple as you say. Andrew sighed. You asked us to build the whole frame with all our might. We used whatever was best. Therefore, we chose the most suitable black iron tree in the blackleaf forest. After we bought the precious black iron tree, we continuously enchanted it with magic, processed it, and exploded it. Finally, we fused so much mithril, enchanted it again, and assembled it. But the frame of this ship is too strong. It has far exceeded my control. Now, ordinary dragon bones cannot withstand it. Dragon bones? William smiled mysteriously. It seemed that Andrew and the rest did not know that he had killed a dragon. Therefore, he asked the shipyard workers to step aside. Andrew and the other shipbuilders retreated to the sides. Then, he waved his hand. The 10-meter-long corpse of a fire dragon filled everyone's eyes. Dragon? Oh my God, giant dragon. Is this a giant dragon? Where did the dragon come from? Is it dead? Andrew ignored the shouts of the others. He walked to the side of the fire dragon's corpse in disbelief. He touched the broken dragon scales, fiddled with the fire dragon's eyelids, and even its mouth and teeth. Then, Andrew swallowed his saliva. His two pointy ears were a little soft. He was dumbfounded. My lord, you killed a dragon? Fortunately, I accidentally killed the fire dragon in the snow mountain of the East Sea. William shrugged nonchalantly. Once he said this, the entire shipyard was in a mess. All the shipbuilders knelt on one knee and congratulated their lord for becoming a dragon slayer, with admiration in their eyes. Andrew was in a daze for a while. He wanted to kneel on one knee, but William helped him up. Captain, it's 121 meters long. This fire dragon is still too small. Do you have a way to fuse all the dragon bones together and add some rare materials to make it the warship's keel? Yes, definitely, but I need more mithril. Andrew's eyes were red. He wanted to swallow the fire dragon in one breath. His eyes were dazed, as if he was thinking about something. But he continued to say, if my lord does not want this pair of wings, I can still make it the sails of the ship. Do you want the dragon scales, the dragon blood, the dragon crystal? Ahem, other than the keel, I want everything. William hurriedly stopped him from daydreaming. Andrew came back to his senses and understood. William must have kept the dragon blood and the dragon crystal. He was indeed a little too greedy. William expressed his respect for Andrew's research spirit. The Dawn vessel was very important, but the other things of this dragon were also very important. He could only shrug his shoulders. I can only give you the keel. What you need to do is to take out all the keel. But the dragon wings are too thick. How are you going to make the sails? It's too thick. There's also a thick layer of scales. It must be very heavy. But my lord, have you ever thought that the dragon wings are still the wings of a giant dragon? They are magic materials. When a giant dragon flaps its wings, it doesn't just rely on the power of the dragon wings. Instead, the dragon wings themselves make use of the wind, allowing the giant dragon to fly easily. So when the dragon wings come into contact with the wind elements, they will become extremely light. So, as long as I stretch the dragon wings from thin to long, and then enchant them and so on, I can turn them into super high quality sails. Their defensive power will also be extremely strong, far from what other sails can compare to. Andrew looked at the giant dragon's corpse and couldn't help but touch it. It was just like a child who had found a new toy. He couldn't let go of it. William suddenly smiled. Then what are you waiting for? The bones and wings of this dragon are all yours. Just leave the rest to me. Really? Andrew, I believe in you. William patted his shoulder very solemnly. For a moment, Andrew's eyes flashed. It was as if he had seen a new life. It was as if he had discovered his mission. So he threw the magic robe to the side, held his dagger, and shouted, "Let's get to work. Everyone, help me. I will personally dismember this fire dragon's corpse. Whoever dares to steal a piece of the fire dragon's flesh, I promise to sink him to the bottom of the sea." Chapter 116. The keel of the Dawn vessel was made from real keel bones. Even if the fire dragon was still young and had some flaws, but the pitiful fire dragon had successfully sacrificed itself. This meant that the potential of the Dawn vessel was limitless. At least among the epic warships, it could be considered one of the best. Although it could be considered epic in other aspects, its offensive capabilities were very low. unless they could install some magic cannons. Even cannons would be fine. As for whether the Dawn vessel could become a legendary warship, William was looking forward to it. In the end, Andrew could only helplessly say that it was impossible. The requirements for a legendary warship were too high. It was not something that the City of Dawn could support. Fortunately, William did not have to obtain a legendary warship. The current epic warships were sufficient. At least it's enough to head to that small island in the south. William hid from the rain and squinted his eyes as he looked at the endless sea in the south. The wind blew and the waves surged. The surface area of the God's continent was too large. The combined surface area of the 9 continents was not even 1/10 of the surface area of the sea. There were millions of small islands. Sea creatures, sea magical beasts. In the underwater palace, mermaids, sirens, sea dragons, and the advanced version of the small merman. In short, the sea was boundless and the resources were abundant. This was the reason why William wanted to develop the maritime industry. A real man should conquer the sea. William sat cross-legged and trained his battle energy. Then, he waited for the giant dragon to be skinned. After all, he had to bring these things back. He had to return the extra-large space ring to Moses. It's not difficult to return what I borrowed, especially when the person who borrowed is an enchanter. I don't dare to be a debtor, William silently complained. Then, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. It was a little difficult for him to skin the 17-meter fire dragon alone. Andrew was not stupid. He used a magic scroll to send a message and found many experienced hunters to help. But even so, William sat at the shipyard for 2 whole days. When all the dragon bones were removed, he brought the almost complete fire dragon back to the City of Dawn. He placed it in the magic formation and walked to the fortune-telling hut. Pom, pom, pom. Come in, the door is open. As usual, Moses was too lazy to open the door. William pushed the door open and adjusted to the darkness in the room. He raised his eyebrows. Moses was still stroking the cat. Oh, if it isn't Sir Lord. Please take a seat. TSK, TSK. Congratulations on becoming a dragon slayer, Sir Lord. It wasn't easy. Moses chuckled and boasted for a while. Then, he looked at his fingers. This space ring is quite useful. William took off the ring and touched it reluctantly. A spatial ring with a volume of 10,000 cubic meters. In his previous life, this was a top-notch spatial ring. You like it? Moses was surprised. Yes. William saw his expression and quickly nodded, just like the little squirrel. Oh, but this is my... Lance held out his hand innocently. William rolled his eyes and helplessly placed the ring on his hand. In the end, he was horrified to find that his palm was being scratched. Gulp. The sound of saliva. The handsome and charming prince, who could conquer all the women in the city, felt that something was wrong. But after Moses retracted his hand, he nimbly scratched his palm. It seemed that he had not done it on purpose. Moses nonchalantly said, "If you want to use it, I'll lend it to you in the future. But, Sir Lord, what about the borrowing fee? What do you want? Just tell me." William waved his hand. He was very rich now. Dragon crystal. William's eyes widened. He could not help but point at Moses. That's too much. Even if you want half of the dragon's scales, I can give them to you. But you want the dragon crystal. Are you joking? How could William bear to give away the legendary dragon crystal of the fire dragon? Moses did not care much about William shouting. He nonchalantly shrugged. What can you do with the dragon crystal? Are you giving it to your 3 cubs? Aren't you afraid that the attributes are wrong? Aren't you afraid that it will explode? You can feed it to the dragon, but do you have it? Do you want to make equipment? Do you want to rely on your 2 ugly subordinates? Or do you want to keep it as a family heirloom, or eat it yourself? Faced with this question, William had nothing to say. That was right. He did not have any means to use the dragon crystal. But he still did not want to give it to Moses because the dragon crystal was very precious. It was priceless in the entire God's continent. Even if it was the dragon crystal of a middle-level fire dragon. If it was fed to a fire-type magical beast, it could increase its bloodline potential, level up, and all attributes. It could be used to create equipment and magic weapons. In short, there were many uses for it, but he had no way to use it now. William thought of this and made up his mind. Without hesitation, he took out the dragon crystal from his small space ring. Once the crimson dragon crystal appeared, the temperature in the room increased significantly. The surrounding magic became denser and gathered towards the dragon crystal in his hand. His hand was covered with a layer of battle energy to prevent being scalded by the dragon crystal. But the dark fortune-telling hut had been dyed red by the dragon crystal. The dazzling light attracted everyone's attention. It had to be said that a treasure like the dragon crystal was very tempting. William took a deep breath and decisively threw the dragon crystal to the shocked Moses. After all, Moses did not expect William to be so straightforward, because this was a dragon crystal. Even he did not have a dragon crystal. In a legendary continent, it was a treasure that could turn brothers against each other. Moses smiled and kept the dragon crystal in a small box. Then, he put it into his space ring. "Thank you. If you want to use the space ring in the future, just tell me." William sighed and sat down on the chair. He said bluntly, "Then do me a favor. You want to bathe in dragon's blood?" Moses asked. "Yes, and it's a large-scale one. I need your magic array." William narrowed his eyes and nodded. No matter what, even in the southeastern region, Moses was the best choice, not to mention the City of Dawn. "It's simple. I guarantee that all the people you choose will become dragon followers and even dragon speakers." Moses nodded confidently, but when William saw him boasting, he did not believe it. "I remember that this thing depends on physical fitness and willpower. A mage's magic array is important, but it's not that crucial. Moreover, only a giant dragon can become a dragon speaker, right?" Moses glanced at him in disdain. "That's a magic array without a dragon crystal. With a dragon crystal as the array, do you think the chances of a dragon follower dying is very high? Moreover, who am I? All right. Also, give me 10 one-year magic scrolls and 310-day magic scrolls." William narrowed his eyes. Moses raised his eyebrows. He felt that William was up to no good. But on account of the dragon crystal, he nodded and asked William to leave quickly. He had to go into seclusion and pet the cat. To train, William walked out and closed the door. He was not a dragon follower in his previous life. He did not know that there was such a trick with the dragon crystal. Is it possible? If I did not decisively give him the dragon crystal, even if Moses agreed to help me, he would not have told me that the dragon crystal can increase the success rate of a dragon follower. William clenched his fist. He had to have a good relationship with Moses. As for the magic scrolls, they are godly tricks that could determine victory or defeat in the future.